This boy was reincarnated as the son of a farmer after meeting Truck Kun, but unlike in the light novels, he didn't get a great new life. Of course not, his parents were just farmers. And he was the third of 4 siblings. Whenever his father went out to work, he and his sister had to hunt in the forest. On top of that, people mocked him for having black hair. They called him a filthy crow. He was furious that he'd been reincarnated into poverty. Then, a system suddenly appeared and displayed his name, Ian Raven. Now you'd think this is where he'd unlock some insanely overpowered abilities. But nope, the system literally told him he was a nobody. To make things worse, if he stayed on this path, he'd spend the rest of his life working in the fields. While his sister was picking fruit in the forest, Ian noticed a shadow behind a tree. A gigantic bear emerged. He rushed to protect his sister, but before the bear could attack, it was instantly incinerated by a bolt of lightning. Nothing was left of it. Someone appeared before them and asked, "Is this the Feldberg territory?" She introduced herself as Aletis, a wandering mage. That was when the protagonist realized magic exists in this world. The mage explained that she was searching for a black-haired boy, which, of course, was him. An old archmage had sent her with one mission, to take the black-haired boy as her disciple. So now we already know where this is going. Ian is about to leave and learn magic. In a medieval world where he's the only person with a system, he'll become a prodigy capable of mastering any spell, and even sharing a beer with a dragon. Arriving at a house with a windmill, his training is finally about to begin. Sitting in front of a giant book, the boy faces the first challenge of his new journey. Before him was the Manhwas, the book that held all the fundamentals of ancient magic. Remembering everything, the mage got permission from his parents and the local lord to take the boy with her. With a clenched fist, he states with absolute certainty that he's ready to start. So the mage begins the first lesson, and he eagerly replies that she can start anytime. Right at the start of his studies, a system window appears, showing his learning progress. As he continues to read several books, his progress increases while he recites the magic words. But even with a stack of books covering his face, he remains steadfast, memorizing every spell. After much effort, the progress bar finally reaches 99%. Then, the system confirms the training's completion, unlocking the ability to use the magical language. 7 long years have passed, and his hand now rests on the same book from the beginning. Then, his master appears and announces that the theoretical part of his studies has finally come to an end. Now much older and more confident, Ian smiles and says he's ready for the next step. Opening his new status window, he confirms his evolution into a novice mage. Changing scenery, the practical training begins atop a floating mountain. Suddenly, without any warning, Ian is pushed off the cliff and begins to free fall. Meanwhile, his master just watches the scene from above, with a confident smile on her face. Plummeting at high speed, he screams that everything he learned in the last few years was just theory. As he continues to fall, his cries for help echo through the skies, but they are completely ignored. From above, his master simply yells for him to calm down and try to hear the voices around him. Completely confused, the young man wonders what kind of voices he's supposed to hear in the middle of nowhere. Not understanding the instruction, the only thing he can hear is the sound of the wind rushing past. But then, some mysterious voices begin to emerge, seeming to communicate directly with him. By concentrating, he finally realizes that this is the ancient language of magic, the Manhwas. Immediately, a system window appears, confirming he has acquired the aeromancy skill. Using his new power, he manipulates the wind around him and manages to land safely in the forest. Soon after, his master approaches and explains that he was able to hear the voice of the wind's heart. After all, a mage only gains true power by communicating with the mysteries of the universe. With a smile, she finishes the lesson by saying that this is the true essence of magic. Processing the lesson, the young man now has a better understanding of magic's true nature. With a satisfied smile, his master says that since he heard the wind, it's time to move on to the next mystery. Full of confidence, he replies that he's ready, and she can bring on the challenge. She then points at him and announces that the first elemental training will be hydromancy. Immediately after, the boy is thrown into the water, causing a huge splash. Submerged, he manages to communicate with the water spirit and creates a whirlpool around himself. Without wasting time, his master points again and says the next test is cryomancy. Sitting in a barrel in the middle of the ice, he shivers from the cold while trying to hear the voice of winter. Back in the forest, he collapses on the ground, completely exhausted, as his master congratulates him on his speed. But without giving him time to breathe, she points her finger at him like a gun. Immediately, a massive explosion of fire engulfs the area, completely surrounding the boy. In the midst of the flames, he panics as he communicates with a strange and aggressive voice. Staring intently at the fire, He screams for help, but his master just watches from a distance. The scene changes to the inside of a dark, damp cave filled with rock formations. Holding an object that lights the way, Ian prepares for the final test, geomancy. Trying to communicate, the voice of the earth speaks enigmatically about what flows and what remains still. Not understanding the message, the boy is completely lost by what he just heard. Bringing a hand to his chin, he begins to doubt if he has enough affinity to learn geomancy. As he considers focusing on other areas, a different energy suddenly appears and interrupts him. Just then, a status window appears right in front of him, showing his available skill points. Realizing he has an unfair advantage, he gets excited seeing that he's basically a player with cheats in this world. So he decides to use the points to increase his geomancy level, touching the screen directly. Right after, an energy envelops his body as the skill is instantly enhanced. Immediately, the voice of the earth speaks again, now revealing the presence of lava flowing beneath the ground. Upon hearing the message clearly, he finally understands what the true magic of the earth is. Satisfied with the result, he gets ready to go back and tell his master he succeeded. But before leaving, he concentrates and recites the words to create a source of light. Then, a torch ignites in his hand, illuminating the cave's darkness. Walking through the area, he hears an unknown voice complaining about the sudden light. Turning towards the darkness, he asks who's there, but the voice denies any connection to the earth. Revealing its identity, the grim voice introduces itself as death itself, leaving the young man in shock. The scene cuts to a clear night sky, with the full moon shining brightly on the horizon. Sitting outside the cave, his master seemed worried about an important engagement. Just then, Ian comes running out of the cave and calls out to her as she's reading a letter. Turning to him, she smiles and congratulates him on completing the training. With a victorious smile, he tells her that on top of everything, he also learned to use shadow magic. Upon hearing the news, her expression changes completely, and she's left speechless. Maintaining a confident pose, he explains that the voice of darkness was actually quite shy. Without a word, she just stares at him with a serious look, processing what she just heard. Noticing her silence, Ian asks worriedly if she's feeling okay. Then, she suddenly calls him by his name, and he answers immediately. With a serious expression, she informs him that it's time for them to descend the mountain. Excited by the idea, he asks what their next destination will be, but she quickly corrects him. Standing face to face, she reveals that this is the moment of their farewell. Soon after, she points the way and instructs him to go to Chronoleek and join the Council of Mages. Explaining why, she says that if it's his destiny, he will surely find a space-time mage there. Completely surprised, the young man doesn't understand why she mentioned space-time magic out of the blue. Laughing at his expression, the mage playfully ruffles his hair, but in truth she knows that Ian has a natural affinity for the mysteries of the universe, because her intuition told her that he would eventually be able to command time itself. Soon after their conversation, night falls, and the time for departure quickly approaches. Waving goodbye, she arranges to meet him again in Dronheim in 3 years. The scene cuts to a bustling village at sunset, with vendors shouting all around. Walking through the streets, he watches the people amidst the hustle and bustle of the local market. Remembering his instructions, he focuses on his goal of finding the Council of Space-Time Mages. With a slight smile, he thinks about how his master is truly unpredictable and a bit hasty. Just then, a man announces he's looking for traveling companions to head north. With nothing else to do, he decides it would be a good idea to check out the offer. Joining a group of merchants, Ian approaches their camp in the middle of the forest. Sitting in silence, he just watches the people moving around the campfire. Just then, the group's leader, a merchant named Leek, starts a conversation with him. Confirming it's his first time in the region, Ian explains that some last-minute business came up. Hearing this, the merchant asks if he knows about Dragon Mountain, an extremely dangerous place. According to him, real dragons appear there, making the crossing nearly impossible. Then, in a friendly way, he asks if the boy knows how to fight or at least dodge well. But Ian denies having any skills, making the merchant's expression change as he calls him useless. Unfazed, the boy simply reveals that he's actually a mage. Instantly, the merchant jumps up, scared, and stammers, unable to believe what he just heard. Suspicious, he even places a hand on the boy's head to see if it's true, while a hooded woman watches. With a curious look, the mysterious woman seems very interested in their conversation. Across the campfire, the other mercenaries are also gaping at the news. Seeing everyone's reaction, Ian asks if there's a problem, not understanding the reason for so much tension. His attitude changing completely, the merchant says it's nothing and tries to offer the boy more food. Watching the scene, Ian is confused about why the merchant is acting so strangely. Still doubting the story, One of the men on the other side stares at Ian with a suspicious look. Laughing loudly, the three mercenaries start to mock him, calling the boy weak and useless. One of them even says that if he's a mage, then so is any stray dog. Suddenly, the hooded woman approaches Ian and whispers something in his ear. With a serious look, she says that if he really is a mage, he should put the three of them in their place. Confused, he asks what she means by that, still not quite understanding the situation. She then explains that he needs to show his power and scare the mercenaries to earn their respect. That way, they would protect him at all costs, no matter what happened on the journey. Unsure of what to do, the young man stays silent for a moment, just processing her advice. Agreeing with the idea, he admits he's never been the type to get angry easily. Meanwhile, one of the mercenaries keeps eating, completely oblivious to the conversation. A moment later, he discreetly spits a piece of a leaf into his own bowl. Noticing the disgusting act, Ian is in disbelief, wondering if the guy really just did that. Instantly, the mercenary starts shaking uncontrollably, as if he's in an earthquake. Completely paralyzed, the mercenary stares at the boy, unable to react to the pressure. Looming over him, Ian questions him with an intimidating glare about why he spit on his plate. Unable to form a sentence, the man just stammers in fear. He then throws himself on the ground and starts apologizing desperately, calling Ian Master Mage. Trying to explain, he says he was just trying to polish the plate with a leaf, not spit on it. Furious, the boy yells that if he was going to clean it, he should have used water. But the mercenary justifies himself, saying the river water was too filthy to be used for cleaning. In disbelief, Ian asks him to repeat what he just said about the water. The man then explains that the water was full of sludge and parasites, making it much worse than spit. Reaching the bizarre conclusion that spit is more hygienic, he leaves Ian completely speechless. This unbelievable statement echoes through the night, showing just how strange the customs of this place were. Watching the scene, the other mercenaries seem to agree with their companion's logic. Shocked by the situation, Ian reflects on the incredible and questionable hygiene standards of the medieval era. Stepping away from the group, he begins to recite an incantation in a low voice in the ancient tongue. Immediately, a different energy is channeled through him and shot directly into the campfire. Suddenly, the campfire flames grow uncontrollably, startling one of the mercenaries. Understanding nothing, the men back away from the fire, completely confused by what's happening. Even the hooded girl is surprised by the display of power she just witnessed. With a dark look, Ian orders them to get some water right now. Yelling at the top of his lungs, he unleashes his frustration about the mercenaries' lack of hygiene. Hours later, the camp is silent and the fire has gone out. Breaking away from the group, some of the mercenaries follow a path into the forest. With a malicious smile, one of them seems determined to find a girl named Kathy. Soon after, they spot the person they were looking for and approach her. Waving suspiciously, the mercenary invites her to come with them since it's dark, but when she turns around, the figure reveals a less than friendly look to the group of men. Quickly, a masked man emerges from his group and grabs the real girl. Completely surprised, the mercenaries yell, asking who those guys are. Without warning, one of the men is hit by an arrow in the chest, dropping instantly. Furious, the group's leader charges forward, demanding to know how they dared to do that. Leading the charge, the mercenary advances with his men toward the mysterious group. Holding the girl with one arm, the masked man just scoffs at the attackers, calling them weak. Upside down, the girl's eyes widen in complete surprise at the situation. Just then, she manages to land a blow on the kidnapper, making him lose his balance instantly. Right after the impact, the two fall to the ground together awkwardly. Getting up quickly, both seem a bit dazed from the fall. Seizing the chance, the girl starts running away while the masked men try to capture her. Far from all the commotion, Ian was sleeping peacefully in his bed at the merchant camp. Having a nightmare, he tosses and turns, muttering about spit and the lack of hygiene, until a mysterious voice echoes in his mind, suddenly waking him with an urgent warning. Sitting on the bed, he tries to understand the strange presence that woke him. Hearing screams outside, he gets up quickly, still confused by the situation. Just then, the merchant leader bursts into the tent, desperately saying they have a problem. Under the moonlight, an intense battle was raging in the middle of the forest. In the midst of the confrontation, one of the masked men lands a fatal blow on a mercenary. With his foot on the man's body, the masked leader shows he doesn't care about the deaths. What really mattered to him was finding the woman they were looking for. Hiding behind a tree, the girl watches the scene, surrounded by the bodies of mercenaries. Desperate, she curls up on the ground, not knowing how to escape, but suddenly, a sword is placed right next to her head without her noticing. Appearing before her, one of the men finds her and stares with a victorious smile. With a menacing look, he tells her to get up or else he'll hurt her. Seeing she had no way out, the girl braces for the worst, believing it was her end. Then, the man raises his sword and prepares to deliver the final blow against her. With a determined look, Ian prepares to jump into action and save the girl. But before the sword can strike, the man is thrown far away by an invisible force. Emerging from a dark energy, Ian suddenly appears, surprising the girl. Turning toward the noise, she sees him slowly approaching through the forest. Without wasting a moment, he grabs her by the arm and pulls her close. Whispering in her ear, he tells her to be quiet and stay close to him. Not understanding anything, the girl just stares at him, still terrified by the whole situation. Then he places her behind him, along with the other members of the group. Reunited with the merchants, they prepare for what's to come. With the frightened girl behind him, Ian prepares to use his abilities. Reciting the words, he invokes the magic he learned in the cave. Suddenly, a dense darkness engulfs the area, covering everything. In the pitch blackness, he conjures a mysterious energy that cuts through the dark. Completely lost, the masked men can't see a thing in front of them, but amidst the confusion, they light their torches and start cursing at each other. Taking advantage of the darkness, Ian guides the group of merchants away from the chaos. Using his skill, he activates night vision to see in the total darkness. Meanwhile, the masked men approach the merchants, unaware of the danger. Holding his sword, their leader threatens the group, who cower in fear. Desperate, the merchant chief begs for mercy, but is completely ignored. With a glint in his eye, Ian prepares to use the fire magic he learned. In that same instant, the masked leader is engulfed by an explosion of flames. Immediately after, he falls to the ground, completely defeated by the surprise attack. Startled, the other masked men prepare for the fight to come. With a serious expression, Ian hopes his show of power will be enough. But upon realizing he's a mage, the men advance fearlessly to attack. Surprised by their reaction, the merchant leader braces for the worst. Suddenly, a giant creature appears before one of the men, ready to attack. With no time to react, the man is devoured by the beast in the blink of an eye. Shocked by the scene, the other masked men and the merchants are paralyzed. Unable to believe his eyes, Ian is completely shocked by the creature before him. Before them, a huge, menacing dragon rose, ready for combat. Still in shock, the masked men retreat, not knowing how to face the beast. With a roar, the dragon charges and attacks the rest of the group, causing a general panic. Terrified, the merchants hide behind Ian, not understanding the situation. Realizing the gravity of the danger, Ian understands the situation is out of control. With a furious gaze, the dragon turns, as if ready to attack. Suddenly, a system window appears, stating he has witnessed a primordial mystery. Not understanding the message, Ian just stares at the screen, completely confused. Soon after, another notification pops up, showing he used an unknown skill. Standing near the dragon, he wonders if he was the one who summoned the creature. Processing the information, he begins to suspect the dragon is one of the mysteries. Remembering his training, he recalls the voices of the wind he heard, and also the voice of the water, which taught him to control rivers and seas, and even the voice of the ice, which made him feel the intense cold of winter. Clenching his fist, Ian makes a decision and prepares to communicate with the beast. With a confident look, he turns to the dragon and calls it by name. Behind him, the merchants cower in fear, not understanding what he's about to do. Facing the creature, Ian approaches, ready to attempt direct communication. With a determined look, he believes he can make himself understood by the dragon. After all, the mysteries of the universe had never disappointed him before. Placing a hand on his chest, he prepares to speak from the heart. With total conviction, he declares that he is a friend, not an enemy. Holding up a sign, he tries to explain that fighting is wrong and that he doesn't want to hurt it, but the dragon just stares at him with a menacing look. Not understanding the message, whispering, the merchants try to decipher the beast's reaction, but are shushed. Concentrating, Ian tries to hear the dragon's voice, but he can't understand a thing. Realizing the communication failure, he gets frustrated, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, a system window appears, offering a new option. With no other choice, he decides to use his points to upgrade his summoning skill. Instantly, the level of his summoning skill increases considerably. Wide-eyed, he realizes he can now hear the dragon's voice. So he approaches the beast and tries to communicate more calmly, but the dragon responds with a roar, demanding he get to the point. With an awkward smile, Ian realizes the skill's effect was incredible. Clearing his throat, he composes himself and tries a more respectful, diplomatic approach. With a serious look, he assures the dragon he has no intention of fighting. After all, he recognizes he would be defeated in seconds by such a powerful creature. Surprised, the merchants wonder if he's using some kind of telepathy. Paying close attention to the conversation, the girl watches everything in silence, still not understanding the situation. Agreeing with his logic, the dragon admits that killing insects like them would be boring. With a smile, Ian celebrates inwardly, believing his plan is working, but his expression changes when he hears the rest of the beast's response. The dragon reveals that, unfortunately for them, it was in a very bad mood that day. Desperate, the merchants throw themselves on the ground and beg the great mage for help. Not knowing what to do, Ian finds himself cornered, facing an enemy he cannot defeat. Understanding the situation, Ian realizes he has no choice but to face the dragon. With a serious look, he turns to the beast and calls out to it once more. Then, he directly asks why the dragon is in such a bad mood. With a wary look, he offers to help solve the problem. But the creature just scoffs at him, saying a mere human couldn't do anything. Unfazed, Ian recites an enchantment in the ancient tongue, preparing a spell. Suddenly, the scenery around them changes completely, surprising everyone. Before them, a fountain of crystal clear water appears in the middle of the forest. Completely shocked, the merchants and the girl can't believe what they're seeing. Curious, the dragon turns to the scene, intrigued by the display of power. Shrouded in magical energy, Ian looks confident, a smile on his face. With a look of interest, the beast admits the situation has become much more interesting. With a smile, Ian introduces himself as a humble mage, seeking the mysteries of the universe. With a satisfied look, the dragon seems to have finally calmed down a bit. Now, with the beast's attention, he prepares to start the negotiation. Noticing the dragon's aggression has lessened, Ian feels more relieved. With a sigh, he understands that the immediate danger has passed for now. Now he needs to think of a way to negotiate with the beast without making demands. Suddenly, he remembers an important piece of advice his old master gave him. During a lesson, she taught him that one cannot use magic without communication. Not quite understanding, he questioned the importance of building a relationship with the mysteries. She then explained that every mystery is different, so it's vital to understand their feelings. With a mischievous smile, Ian realizes that social wisdom is the key. Confident, he opens his skill window to look for a solution to the problem. Surprised, he finds a guide on how to master the art of summoning. With a glint in his eye, he believes he's found the answer he needed. Focusing on the screen, he begins to read the guide's instructions carefully. The first tip surprises him, suggesting he offer the dragon a good drink. Curious, he keeps reading to find out the next step of the plan. With a tense expression, he waits for the next part, anxious for the answer. To his surprise, the final tip is to simply flatter the creature as much as possible. Not understanding at all, he wonders what kind of crazy advice this is. Kneeling, he realizes he needs to win the dragon's trust to survive. Looking at the sky, he understands this is the only way to find an opening. Mustering his courage, he approaches the beast and respectfully gets its attention. With a serious look, he announces that he has prepared a gift for the great dragon. Curious, the creature accepts the offer and tells him to bring the gift immediately. Turning to the merchant, Ian calls him by name very seriously. Without wasting time, he orders the man to bring the strongest drink he has. Soon after, a box full of bottles of liquor is brought over, but the dragon complains, saying the gift is pathetic and the bottles are small. Irritated, Ian explains that in the human world, smaller quantity means greater value. Without giving it time to complain further, he starts pouring the drink into a mug. With the mug full, he offers it to the dragon, ready to see the result. Suspicious, the creature approaches and sniffs the strong scent of the liquor. With a threatening look, the dragon questions if the boy isn't plotting something. Stammering, Ian denies it with a nervous smile, while the merchants panic. To prove his good intentions, he takes a generous gulp of the drink straight from the mug. Desperate, the merchants watch the scene, fearing the plan will go wrong. With a forced smile, he assures it that the drink is safe, even as he feels its kick. Curious, the dragon approaches and sniffs the drink once more, now more confident. Looking at the mug, it seems to finally consider the possibility of trying it. Holding the mug with its claws, the beast prepares to take a sip. With its tongue, it tastes a little of the drink. Still hesitant, tense, the merchants hold their breath, waiting for the dragon's reaction. Suddenly, the creature reacts unexpectedly, seeming to like what it drank. Its body relaxing, the dragon admits the drink isn't delicious, but for some reason, it finds it addicting and seems to want more. With a victorious smile, Ian offers another drink, saying this one is even better. As the night wears on, the unlikely negotiation continues under the moonlight. Completely drunk, the dragon celebrates, saying it really liked the drink. Relieved, Ian wipes the sweat from his brow, happy to have calmed the beast. After 7 barrels, the merchants are impressed by the dragon's tolerance. With a thumbs up, Ian congratulates the creature, admitting it's an incredible drinker. But the plan to escape while it slept wasn't working, and they ran out of liquor. Suddenly, the dragon looks at him and asks about the reason for its bad mood. Sitting side by side, Ian confirms that he wants to know the story behind it all. With a sentimental air, the beast begins to vent, leaving the boy confused. It reveals that its nest was smaller and less luxurious than the others, but even so, its beloved said the place was cozy and perfect. Surprised, Ian can't believe the dragon had a girlfriend with that appearance. With a sad look, it continues the story, saying not everything was perfect. Everyone started making fun of her for being with a dragon like him. Feeling guilty about the situation, he couldn't take the pressure. With a roar of pain, it reveals that it ended the relationship because of that. Startled, the merchants are frightened by the noise and the intensity of the crying. Completely drunk and emotional, the dragon unleashes all its pain in a shout. Exhausted, the merchants look like they've lost their souls from all the accumulated stress. Hearing the story, Ian realizes the dragon's feelings are very human. With a thoughtful look, he understands he can use this situation to his advantage. Turning to the dragon, he calls out to it once more to make a proposal. Stepping forward, he offers to use his magic. Suspicious, the dragon stares at him, not understanding what he's getting at. With a confident smile, Ian asks for a small favor in return for his help. Under the moonlight, the negotiation finally reaches a decisive point. The scene shifts to a mountainous landscape. The weather seems peaceful for now. Next, we see Ian walking through a forest with a less than friendly expression on his face. Meanwhile, in the cart, the guild leader Leek is snoring his head off, completely passed out, until a hand pokes his forehead, making the old guy blush and mumble something in his sleep. Seeing this, our protagonist's patience instantly evaporates, so he grabs the merchant's face, warning him to get his hand away, and fast. In that same instant, an overwhelming presence glares at Leek, leaving the old man completely paralyzed with fear. Right after, the cart is violently thrown backward, launching everyone inside. The whole group ends up falling awkwardly onto the road. Kathy gets up a bit dizzy, holding her head, while Leek still looks completely clueless. A flashback shows that Ian had just confronted him, and then everyone passed out from Drake's roar. Back in the present, Leek asks if the creature has calmed down, but Ian warns him that it's waiting up there. Hearing this, the merchants hug each other in a panic, thinking they're about to become dragon food. But Ian cuts the drama short, explaining he made a deal to save their lives and that the beast is waiting for him. Completely surprised, Kathy can barely process the word deal. Seeing this, the merchants start thanking him with tears in their eyes, making Ian feel completely awkward. In a quick flashback, we see he only promised to fix Drake's nest in exchange for everyone's freedom. Completely ecstatic, Leek starts shouting the protagonist's name to the heavens as if he were a god. Hearing the shouting, Ian is totally lost, not understanding what all the fuss is about. In the merchants' minds, they imagine our protagonist tamed the dragon, which now acts like a needy puppy. Continuing their journey, the protagonist scolds Drake, who accepts it all with his head bowed. And to complete their fantasy, the boy climbs on top of the defeated beast, showing who's boss. With this heroic image in their minds, the merchants burst into tears of emotion. Leek then makes an oath, promising that from this day on, they will protect the mage with their own lives. Fed up, Ian ignores the drama and tells them to get ready to leave and not to go without him. Saying this, he turns his back and starts to walk away, while Leek replies with something he doesn't even hear. After that, Leek turns to his men and tells them to do a head count and get organized. From a distance, Kathy watches the boy walk away with a curious and intrigued look. Making a decision, she decides to follow the mage to see what he's up to. The scene then cuts to the inside of a dark, damp cave, the Great Dragon's Nest. Entering the cave, Ian is shocked by the state of the place. Right after, Drake confronts him and growls, warning him not to think about chickening out now. Despite his posture, the protagonist's health bar shows he's almost at his limit from exhaustion. Even so, he decides he'll fix the cave walls so he can finally rest. Closing his eyes, the mage begins to concentrate to use his earth magic. Then he casts a spell, calling on the power of the land itself. At that moment, an elemental entity appears and asks harshly what the human wants now. When he tries to ask for a favor, the spirit cuts him off, saying it's too busy. With the refusal, the boy feels awkward and realizes the entity really doesn't like him. Drake then asks how the conversation went, and Ian explains that the Earth refused to help for now. Deep down, he already knows that the answer will probably be the same next time. Hearing this, Drake comments that if the Earth itself refuses, there's nothing more to be done. This resigned reaction from the dragon catches the protagonist completely by surprise. Showing a sentimental side, the beast thanks him for the attempt, even though it was useless. Seeing his sadness, Ian says his name with a compassionate look. Breaking the silence, Drake asks for the mage's name, who replies, Ian Heredis Raven. Afterward, the dragon introduces himself as Drake Longtail and extends his hand, proposing they be friends. Accepting the offer, Ian shakes the dragon's claw while repeating the name Longtail. In that instant, the gesture seals the friendship between the two in the dark cave. Just then, a system window pops up in front of him, announcing that he has acquired the ability to summon Drake. Seeing the notification, he feels bad for gaining a skill without being able to do anything for his new friend in return. Drake then calls his name, interrupting his thoughts. To celebrate their friendship, the beast offers its treasure as a gift, telling him to take as much as he wants. Immediately, a gigantic pile of gold and jewels appears, confirming his master was right about dragons. Analyzing the jewels, he laments that with them, he could convince the Earth entity to help. Suddenly, he gets an idea and realizes he can use those precious stones in another way. Turning to his new friend, he asks if he can be a little greedy with the gift. Not understanding, the dragon tilts its head to the side, confused by the question. Then Ian kneels and places one of the jewels in the center of a magic circle on the ground. With a confident smile, he remembers the method his master taught him for situations like this. Recalling what he learned, the plan was simple. If the target is stubborn, just offer a gift using a magic circle. He then stands up and tells Drake he's counting on him in case anything goes wrong. With a smile on his face, the boy begins the summoning, channeling his energy into the circle, but the Earth entity appears again, mocking him and saying it won't allow a human to summon it. In that same instant, the jewel in the center of the circle reacts, releasing intense energy. Right after, the magic circle expands, creating a portal of pure elemental energy. With this, the cave walls begin to rebuild themselves as rocks move and reshape. The result is a light so bright that it illuminates the entire forest outside the cave. Seeing the spell's intensity, Drake shields his eyes with his claw, completely shocked. His eye then widens as he realizes something is coming towards them. When the light fades, the cave has been completely transformed into a magnificent nest, and the circle is gone. Drake stands frozen, looking at Ian with eyes shining with pure admiration and surprise. The scene shows the new structure of the cave in detail, which now looks like an ancient temple. Suddenly, the dragon starts sniffing the air, sensing a very pleasant aroma. Curious, he asks if the mage also used magic to create that scent, but Ian says no. Overcome with emotion, Drake thanks his new friend with a rather rough hug. He then starts rubbing his face against the protagonist, already imagining that he can now even start a family. Seeing this, Ian says he's happy for him, but suddenly starts to feel strange. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet begins to tremble strangely and without explanation. Completely confused, he puts a hand to his head, not understanding what's going on. Right after, the boy feels a sharp pain and brings a hand to his mouth, completely in shock. Seeing his condition, the dragon panics, noticing that his friend is bleeding. Trying to stay on his feet, Ian faces the situation with a look of pure determination, but the effort is useless, and he collapses to the ground, causing Drake to scream his name in desperation. Holding his unconscious friend in his arms, Drake panics and yells at him to snap out of it. Seeing he won't wake up, the beast grows desperate, not knowing what to do to help. Just then, he remembers the girl and shouts for her at the cave entrance. Drawn by the desperate cry, Kathy runs in and finds the chaotic scene. Seeing the girl, the dragon turns its head toward her with a surprised look. She then stops running, frozen in fear as she faces the beast. Faced with the dragon holding the unconscious mage, the girl kneels, unable to react. Meanwhile, Ian remains unconscious in his friend's protective grip. Noticing the intruder, Drake takes a threatening stance and growls at her. Terrified, Kathy raises her hands and begs the dragon to listen. She desperately explains that she and the mage are friends, pleading with it not to eat her. Trying to prove her point, she makes a giant OK sign with her arms to emphasize their friendship. Hearing the word friends, the dragon's expression changes as it seems to process the information. The tension finally breaks, and the girl lets out a sigh of relief. The scene cuts back to Ian, still passed out and now leaning against the cave wall. Night finally falls, revealing a starry sky and a full moon. Inside the cave, a single candle illuminates the silent space. Slowly, Ian starts to wake up, groaning as he opens his eyes. Still groggy, he reaches out, instinctively searching for his phone to check the time. His hand then finds and grabs something next to him. Confused, he's taken aback by the object's soft texture, wondering if his phone turned into jelly. Feeling it a bit more, he compares the sensation to a cat's paw. Suddenly, a voice asks if he's awake, completely startling him. Looking up, he realizes he was sleeping in Kathy's lap and holding her hand. He sits up abruptly, completely embarrassed, and asks what she's doing there. Still disoriented, he wonders if he's dreaming about his phone coming to life. Seeing his confusion, Kathy suggests he lie down for a little longer, but he tries to get up again, and the girl warns him not to be so hasty. Placing a hand on his head, he finally remembers that he had passed out cold. In a quick flashback, he understands he pushed himself too hard to level up his summoning art. Back in the present, he looks at Kathy worriedly, wondering if she saw the whole thing. Dying of embarrassment, Ian covers his face with his hood, leaving Kathy completely confused by his reaction. Then he notices the dragon is gone and asks where it went, and the girl replies that it just left out of nowhere. Figuring it went to find its mate, he's shocked by his new friend's excitement. With a bored look, he mumbles that he didn't expect the dragon to be that happy. Turning to the girl, he apologizes for the trouble, but she says it's okay. He then asks how she got in, and she explains she just told Drake she was his friend. Confused, he asks how she communicated with the beast, leaving the girl puzzled by the question. Realizing the situation, it dawns on him that the dragon might have used some kind of automatic translation. Changing the subject, Kathy says she followed him despite knowing the risks of that decision. She then faces him with a serious look and says she needs to ask him something. Not understanding at all, he just asks what it is. With a guilty look, she starts talking about the attack from the previous night. She then reveals that all of it happened because of her, leaving Ian surprised. Next, she apologizes for dragging him into this whole mess. As the mood grows heavy, he becomes thoughtful while silence fills the cave. Remembering the scene in the forest, Ian finally understands why she was shaking with so much fear. Breaking the awkward silence, he clears his throat to get the girl's attention. Outraged, he asks if she was in league with the bandits, and she immediately denies it. He then points out the contradiction, leaving her unable to deny her own words. Resolutely, she reveals that it was a secret and that her name isn't Kathy. In his mind, he scoffs at the situation, picturing her as a fairy tale princess. But the girl continues, introducing herself as Lucy, from the noble Talion family. She then reveals that the bandits were sent by her fiancé to kidnap her. Imagining a lover's quarrel, he makes a disinterested face, which irritates Lucy. She then explains that she was planning to go far away, where he would never find her. But after the attack, she lost all the confidence she had to continue her escape alone. Desperate, she grips his hand tightly, looking into his eyes. With a trembling voice, she asks him to help her escape, leaving him completely stunned. Holding her hands, he asks why she's running away and what her fiancé did. With a pained expression, she begins to explain that her family rules the Fianleb region. Without knights to protect them, her house was constantly threatened by external enemies. At that rate, a territorial war would have completely destroyed her family. Remembering a flashback, the solution they found was an arranged marriage. So her family promised her to a man who was a former mercenary captain. Leading the most powerful mercenary group of the time, his presence finally stopped the threats. At first, he seemed like a charming man, content with his new position as heir. Watching from afar, the young woman seemed happy and even in love with her fiancé. During parties, she would smile and genuinely enjoy herself by his side. But over time, he started using his status to seize power for himself. With that, he began seeing other women and treating Lucy with contempt. Unable to bear the situation any longer, her parents demanded the engagement be called off. Clutching her chest, she remembers the moment everything fell apart. Revealing his true colors, that man poisoned her parents without hesitation. Hearing this revelation, Ian is left completely shocked and speechless. Crying, she explains that he silenced them because he would lose all his power if the engagement was broken. Hearing the story, Ian falls silent, processing just how absurd the situation was. Thinking about her fiancé, he's certain the guy is a complete psycho and a massive jerk. Meanwhile, Lucy explains that without marrying her, he can't inherit the Talion name or fortune. That's why, she continues, she ran away with the help of her servants, because she'd rather die than marry him. Clutching her dress tightly, she says he'll keep chasing her just to secure the marriage. Pleading with her eyes, she begs Ian to please help her escape safely. Analyzing the situation, he finally understands why she can't handle this on her own. Besides, the mental image of a fiancé hunting his own bride makes everything even heavier. But even so, he faces the girl, thinking he'll never understand how nobles think. Crying, she swears on the honor of the Talion family that she will make it worth his while if he helps her. Questioning her trust, Ian asks why she chose him and what would happen if he betrayed her. She quickly replies that her fiancé is a cheapskate and would only give a few silver coins for her head. But then, with a determined look, she claims she can give him absolutely everything. Hearing the proposal, Ian is completely confused and repeats the word everything out loud. Then, with full conviction, Lucy offers him the entire house of Talion if that's what he wants. Awkward silence hangs in the air as Ian processes the girl's crazy proposal. Analyzing the offer, he realizes it could even mean she would marry him. Thinking about the possibilities, he sees a path to becoming a holy knight. But he quickly dismisses the idea, as his true goal was something else from the very beginning. Looking in a mirror, he remembers he was reborn in a fantasy world to master magic. So he decides that helping Lucy would be a good way to gain experience as a mage. Breaking the silence, he clears his throat again, getting her attention. Then he says it would be better for her to ask a swordsman for help, since mages aren't warriors. Hearing his refusal, Lucy's eyes well up with tears, completely disappointed and hopeless. But Ian stands up and finishes his sentence, saying he can make an exception. With a sly grin, he says that if she's paying, he'll help her escape. With tears in her eyes, Lucy sees his reflection as her only hope. Suddenly, the girl starts crying, leaving Ian confused and wondering why. He then kneels and asks if he said something wrong, trying to understand her reaction. Still crying, she squeezes his hand and thanks him for his help. Moved by his response, Lucy hugs him tightly, burying her face in his chest. Surprised by the gesture, Ian just stands there while she continues the hug. In that cave, their deal is sealed with that gesture of gratitude and desperation. The scene cuts to the next morning with the sun shining brightly in the sky. Outside, Drake is chilling in style, enjoying the morning breeze. Noticing someone's presence, he turns in surprise and adjusts his sunglasses. Soon after, Ian and Lucy exit the cave, and the beast greets them excitedly. With his partner by his side, he asks his friend how he's feeling now. Looking at the sky, Ian says he's fine and that they need to get down the mountain. He then thanks the dragon for the gift, showing a bag with some of the jewels. To help, Drake lies on the ground and offers them a ride to get down faster. Thanking him for his kindness, he climbs onto the dragon's back, getting ready for the trip. Seeing this, Lucy just stands there, completely nervous and unsure of what to do. Noticing her hesitation, Drake turns and growls at her to get on already. Seeing the girl's fear, Ian asks his friend not to be so mean to her. Completely lost, Lucy can't understand the conversation between the mage and the beast. Ian then extends his hand to her, showing that everything is okay and that she can trust him. With a smile on his face, he tells her to climb onto the dragon's back without fear. Holding her hand firmly, he helps her up from the ground. On top of the beast, Ian announces that it's finally time to leave. Immediately after, Drake starts running through the forest at high speed, kicking up dust. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the merchants are starting to panic. Arguing among themselves, one of them recalls that the mercenaries accompanying them were completely wiped out. Scared, one of them yells that if the bandits are still around, they're all going to die. Despite the panic, the other merchant tries to calm things down and urges for some caution. But the first one retorts that bandits are brainless and are definitely still after them. Unable to reach a conclusion, they both turn to their boss, Leek, asking for a final decision. Sitting on a rock, the guild leader just clears his throat, keeping the suspense in the air. At that moment, he opens his eyes with an expression of pure certainty and determination. Pointing his finger, he confidently declares that they will wait for the mage. Contradicting the decision, one of the merchants panics and yells that there's no way he's staying put. But the other, with a smile on his face, gives a thumbs up and agrees to follow the guild leader. With his arms crossed, Leek states with absolute certainty that the mage defeated a dragon, so it's impossible for him to be dead. 10 minutes later, all that confidence evaporates as the three are seen kneeling on the ground, lamenting their fate. At that moment, the bandit leader approaches and tells them to stop whining right now. He then points a sword at Leek's throat, who desperately begs for his life. Ignoring the cries, the bandit orders him to hand over the woman who was with their group. He then grabs him by his clothes, demanding the girl with the dark blue hair and warning him not to play dumb. Confused, Leek tries to remember who he's talking about, repeating the description in a low voice. Then, Kathy's image comes to mind, making them both realize who the bandit is talking about. The leader then asks where she is, and the merchants turn, looking for her around the camp. Seeing that the girl has simply vanished, they stare at the empty spot where she was, completely in shock. With a wicked grin, the bandit understands the situation and prepares for the worst. Realizing their end has come, the three of them hug and desperately scream the mage's name. At that same moment, the bandit leader hears something and looks back, trying to identify the noise. Crying with joy, the merchants realize they're saved because the mage brought a dragon with him. Completely confused, the bandit leader can barely process the words mage and dragon. Just then, a huge figure rushes toward them, kicking up dust and dirt wherever it goes. On top of the creature, Ian and Lucy rapidly approach the merchant's camp. Seeing the girl, the bandit chief points and asks if that's her, and his man confirms it. But one of his men, looking at her mount, is frozen in fear by what he sees. A moment later, Drake's terrifying face glares at the bandits with a furious look. Realizing the mess he's in, the bandit leader breaks into a cold sweat. Without a second thought, he yells for his men to run and bolts into the forest. With the bandits on the run, a sense of calm finally settles over the sunlit forest. Relieved, Leek approaches Lucy and says it's a good thing she was with the mage. But one of the merchants raises a question, wondering how the bandits knew about her. Overhearing the conversation, Ian turns around when he hears the name of the Church of the Celestial God. With a serious look, he realizes it's been a long time since he's heard that name. In a flashback, he recalls that this is the world's dominant religion, but it has become corrupted. Analyzing the situation, he realizes that Lucy's enemies won't give up so easily. With his arms crossed, he stares at the girl, who seems uncomfortable under his gaze. Imagining her pursuers hunting Lucy relentlessly, Ian feels a genuine sense of fear. He then turns to Drake and asks his new friend for a favor. Without hesitation, he asks the beast to drive the men away and to eliminate them if necessary. With a confident look, the dragon replies that if it's a request from his friend, he'll do it with pleasure. Soon after, the beast takes off at high speed, following the trail of the fleeing bandits. Watching his friend leave, Ian reflects on how he needs to change to survive in this world. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain, and his eyes glow with a strange, intense light. Feeling dizzy, Ian brings a hand to his head, wondering if he overused his power again. Worried, Lucy approaches and asks if he's pushing himself too hard, but he says he's fine. Supporting the girl, he holds her by the arm as she insists he doesn't look well at all. From a distance, Leek observes the scene with a hand on his chin, a look of discovery on his face. He then walks over and asks if they're a couple, leaving our hero flustered. Back in the wagon, Ian leans back and relaxes, while Lucy sits silently beside him. Suddenly, his eyes glow, and a system window appears before him. The notification informs him that his dragon has eliminated another human, the 11th one that day. Analyzing the message, he finds it convenient to receive these reports, but regrets not being able to summon his friend here. Just then, he hears a voice call his name and turns, recognizing it as his friend's. In a vision, he sees Drake eliminating the last of the bandits with a powerful strike. Thanking him mentally, he says the dragon truly saved their lives. With a satisfied look, the beast replies that it was nothing, and he'd do anything for his friend. Drake's voice then asks if he's leaving already, and Ian confirms that he is. Remembering their conversation, he understands that his dragon friend cannot leave the mountains. Imagining a farewell scene, he regrets not being able to see him one last time. In his mind, he thanks him for everything, and the dragon replies that the pleasure was all his. Suddenly, Drake's voice calls him back to reality, as if remembering something. As a farewell gift, the beast mentions a phoenix nest and asks if he's interested. The scene shifts to the city of Riverville, a prosperous and lively place. Standing on the street, Ian and Lucy watch the bustling crowd, while our hero thinks about the dragon's proposal. In his mind, Drake explains that there are rumors of an ice phoenix living in the northern mountains. The scene shows an image of a phoenix, a bird of fire and rebirth. Then, the image changes to an ice version of the creature, with feathers that freeze everything they touch. Known as the Ice Phoenix, the creature is one of the most powerful in the region. Observing the city, Ian wonders if he could turn such a creature into one of his summons. Just then, Leek and his men approach, calling out to the mage cheerfully. With a smile, the guild leader says they're going to meet the feudal lord and invites him along. Analyzing the situation, Ian realizes that for Lucy to escape, it would be best to avoid drawing the attention of the nobles. One of the merchants then invites Lucy to join them if she has nowhere else to go. Hearing the invitation, the girl just looks away, unsure of how to respond. Taking the lead, Ian refuses the offer and says they will rest at an inn before leaving. Hearing the word "we," the merchant's jaws drop, completely shocked by the revelation. With a blush on her face, Lucy just shrinks beside our hero, unable to look at anyone. With a smile, she leans on him, while Ian grumbles that he's a bit tired from the journey. Observing the scene, Leek and his men look depressed as their suspicions are confirmed. With a lovesick smile, the guild leader celebrates that the two are really together. From a distance, a man in noble attire watches the commotion, seemingly looking for someone. Walking through the city, Lucy comments that pretending to be his girlfriend makes things easier and keeps the idiots away. She then questions why he speaks so formally, since he claims to be a farmer's son. Explaining the situation, he says there's no deep reason. he's just imitating his master. Hearing his answer, Lucy becomes thoughtful, processing the admiration he has for his mentor. Changing the subject, Ian asks what her plan is from this point on. With a determined look, she replies that she's going to find Count Katina. With an awkward smile, she replies that they didn't get along badly, but they weren't close. Analyzing her response, he realizes her plan is risky if she isn't certain of his help. Indignant, she retorts that there's no one more trustworthy in the world than her uncle. With a disdainful look, he simply replies that if she says so, he'll believe her. She then explains that he's better than a stranger, who would only ask for her hand in marriage because of her status. With a sly smile, she adds that if a mage like him were to ask, she wouldn't mind. Cutting her off, he reminds her that their contract ends as soon as they find the Count. Annoyed, she asks if he isn't being too cold to a noblewoman's proposal, but he simply replies that there are plenty of other women in the world, not giving it much thought. Hearing his response, Lucy pouts, completely sulking at his coldness. Noticing her reaction, he asks where she's going, and she excitedly guides him to the inn. As they enter the tavern, the sound of a bell announces the arrival of new customers. Greeted with a warm welcome, they find themselves in the bustling atmosphere of the inn. Approaching the counter, Ian asks for a room for a few nights with access to a bath. For payment, he places the bag of jewels on the counter, asking if it's enough. With a greedy smile, the innkeeper says it's more than enough and that she'll prepare the room. Pointing a finger, she asks if the young lady will also be bathing, leaving Lucy shocked. Stepping back, she crosses her arms and says she's fine, completely embarrassed by the question. Annoyed, he asks if she thinks the water is dirty, and she confirms that's part of the reason. With her hands on her face, she yells that she shouldn't have to spell it out for him, but Ian is completely confused, not understanding the girl's exaggerated reaction. He then remembers that medieval baths had no privacy at all. Realizing his blunder, he's shocked by his own cluelessness. Turning to the innkeeper, he asks her to prepare a bath just for him. With a sigh, Lucy shrinks down, looking frustrated with the whole situation. While they wait, all the men in the tavern stare at the girl with lecherous gazes. Noticing the unwanted attention, Ian becomes visibly uncomfortable with the scene. He then turns to Lucy and tells her to put on her hood, but she corrects him to use the name Kathy. Losing his patience, he rushes her, saying everyone is staring as he covers her with the hood. Irritated by his attitude, she mutters that he's so annoying. From a distance, a group of men watches the scene with sly smiles on their faces. Just outside the inn, one of the men comments on the woman he just saw. With a love-struck smile, he says he's never seen a beauty like hers in his entire life. Meanwhile, the other points out she only has a skinny kid for company. With malicious grins, they agree to grab the girl to have some fun. But with a confident smile, their leader says they don't look like they're staying for long. So he decides they'll take the girl today, giving them no time to escape. The scene shifts to the castle of Baron Kaltz, the Lord of Riverville. Seated on his throne, the nobleman warns Leek to work hard and not cause trouble. Kneeling, the guild leader gratefully accepts the opportunity with a deep bow. In his thoughts, he realizes that if he can please the Baron, he might even get to stay at the castle. Suddenly, he has a brilliant idea and decides to tell the nobleman about the mage. With an exaggerated bow, he says he has something important to tell him. With a dramatic gesture, he claims it was supposed to be a secret, but his respect for the Baron prevents him from keeping it. Stroking his mustache, the nobleman feels flattered and tells him to say what he knows. With a smile on his face, Leek reveals he met a mage during his travels. In a brief and exaggerated version, Leek tells how the mage who uses a dragon saved everyone. Satisfied with the story, he says it's too early for the nobleman to be amazed by what he's heard. Then he reveals that the great and dangerous mage named Ian is staying at an inn in town. Shocked by the news, the Baron rises from his throne, completely stunned and frightened. In his thoughts, he realizes the danger of having a temperamental mage in his territory. Imagining the chaos, he pictures himself facing an enraged mage, ready to unleash a dragon's fury. He then envisions his city in flames, with people running desperately to save their lives. But he soon realizes the situation could be even worse, as there's already a group of lunatics in his territory. The scene cuts to a group of knights in heavy armor and closed helms, the Holy Order of Santiago. Driven by devotion to their god, they are monks and martial artists who hunt demons and monsters. With their swords drawn, they proclaim themselves the guardians of humanity. The Baron then imagines a scenario where the Knights of Santiago and the mage meet. Picturing the scene, he sees the two sides facing off on his lands, ready for a confrontation. The mere thought of a conflict of that magnitude makes the nobleman break out in a cold sweat of pure dread. Desperate at the possibility, the Baron rises from his throne and shouts for his governor. Promptly, the governor appears, and places himself at His Excellency's disposal. Pointing at Leek, the nobleman orders them to give him a room in the castle. Immediately after, he orders them to summon the Order of Santiago at once. With the order given, urgency spreads through the castle, and they rush to send the summons immediately. Meanwhile, at the inn, Ian and Lucy are sitting at a table, enjoying their meal. At another table, a customer complains to the innkeeper, asking where his food is. With a tired expression, the woman laments that she hasn't even prepared the bathwater yet. Overhearing the conversation, Ian offers to take care of his own bath, leaving the woman surprised. He then turns to Lucy and tells her to go upstairs as soon as she's done eating, and she agrees. The girl then brings a spoonful of soup to her mouth, savoring the warm food. From afar, one of the men in the tavern watches her with a malicious smile. Finishing her meal, she gets up and starts climbing the stairs to the second floor. Walking down the dark hallway, she heads to the room they rented, but suddenly, a hand grabs her from behind, stopping her in her tracks. Turning around, she faces a strange man who asks if she's with the mage. Frightened, she asks who he is, trying to pull away from the man's grip. With a smile, he introduces himself as a servant the mage hired. Showing a coin, he says the mage sent him to take her to the docks immediately. Suspicious, she mentions that he should be taking a bath, and the man makes up an excuse. Fearing the worst, she thinks her fiancé's men have already found them. Without giving her time to think, he rushes her, saying they need to go now. Suddenly, a body tumbles down the stairs, making a loud noise and startling everyone. The scene cuts to the back door of the inn, which slowly opens. The man then runs out, dragging Lucy with him out of the tavern. In the middle of their run, she senses something is wrong and stops suddenly. Outside, she sees Ian tending the fire to heat the bathwater. At that moment, the man yanks off her hood and strikes her. Her scream echoes through the courtyard, catching the attention of everyone nearby. Hearing the noise, Ian is alerted by the desperate scream. Outside, Ian calls out for Lucy, still not understanding what happened. Suddenly, one of the henchmen attacks him from behind with a wooden club, but with a swift move, Ian dodges the blow, ducking just in time. The man then loses his balance and stumbles, falling flat on his face. Without giving him time to get up, Ian knocks him down with a precise blow. Analyzing the situation, he realizes these men weren't sent by Lucy's fiancé. On the other side of the fence, the kidnappers yell for their accomplice to hurry up. Then Ian turns and faces the men, ready for the impending confrontation. Seeing that escape is no longer an option, the henchman gets up and tries to block Ian's path. Annoyed by the interruption, he grumbles that he lost his chance because of that idiot. Suddenly, a strange energy begins to envelop the man, who freezes in fear. Completely bewildered, he can barely ask what's happening to him. Meanwhile, Ian realizes he needs to find a mystery he can use with his current skill level. With a smile on his face, he hears voices saying it's the perfect time to play. Hearing the voices, he recognizes them as belonging to the dark eyes that are watching him. With a gesture, he summons the darkness, covering the entire courtyard in a dense shadow. Completely terrified, the man cowers, not understanding what's happening around him. Suddenly, the darkness vanishes and Ian appears wearing a blindfold, leaving the man confused. In a cold voice, he explains that when using the shadow art, only he can see. As reinforcements arrive, the man begs for mercy, but it's already too late. Hearing the footsteps, Ian realizes the henchman has called the other kidnappers. With the club in hand, he prepares to strike the man, who cringes in fear. Ignoring his panic, the protagonist asks where they took the girl. Suddenly, the blindfold disappears and the man realizes he can see again, much to Ian's annoyance. Losing his patience, he hits him on the head, demanding an immediate answer. At the sound, a sword is thrown in his direction, nearly hitting him. Dodging just in time, he sees the weapon stuck in the wooden fence beside him. Then a voice orders him to stop, and Ian faces the newcomers with a serious expression. With an analytical gaze, the protagonist realizes the earlier darkness wasn't his doing. Leading the group, a white-haired man questions him, introducing himself as part of the Holy Order of Santiago. Claiming to be the mage who summoned the darkness, Ian holds a man pinned to the ground. Nearby, a group of men led by a gray-haired gentleman watches the scene grimly. Glancing to the side, Ian notices the imposing presence of the unknown man. Meanwhile, the pinned man crawls on the ground, desperately pleading for help. Pointing at the mage, he accuses Ian of attacking him without any reason to the approaching group. Ian then shoots him a furious glare, making the accuser shrink back in fear. Observing the situation, the group's leader just gives a slight smile as if he understands everything. He then remarks to his men that if Ian is truly a mage, the accusation is entirely possible. Moments earlier, the day had been completely calm and sunny. As water boiled in a cauldron, Someone was approaching to ask permission for something. Returning to the present, Ian turns and demands to know what the man meant by possible. With all the calm in the world, the gentleman simply replies that it's just the way of mages. Continuing his explanation, he defines mages as beings who bend everything to their own will. Hearing this definition, Ian is completely shocked and angered by the prejudice. Even the other men around find his reaction strange, not understanding why he's so offended. Gripping his staff tightly, Ian yells at them to stop talking nonsense. Shouting in anger, he defends himself, saying he was attacked first and would never assault someone without reason. As the argument ends, a tense and silent atmosphere settles between the mage and the group of men. Instantly, Ian realizes he lost his cool and becomes visibly worried about the leader's reaction. But instead of anger, the gray-haired man breaks into a warm smile, completely confusing the young mage. Approaching him, the leader says that this attitude can only mean Ian is an extremely skilled mage. Despite the compliment, one of the men interjects, saying that's no excuse to use vile magic. Not understanding the accusation, Ian turns in surprise and asks what this vile magic is. The man promptly explains that using darkness to block the sun is an act of hiding from the heavens. With his arms crossed, he concludes by stating that skulking in the shadows is a cowardly and despicable act. As Ian processes these words, his eyes narrow as he deduces they must be followers of the sun god. Facing the group, who reveal themselves as members of the Church of the Sun, he prepares to respond in kind. Clearing his throat to get their attention, Ian begins his counter-argument calmly. Questioning their logic, he asks if the coexistence of day and night isn't the very law of providence. Heatedly, he finishes by explaining that the absence of the sun creates darkness, and he merely used this natural law to his advantage. Completely speechless, the man stammers, trying to respond to Ian's argument. Meanwhile, the other men in the group begin to whisper among themselves, seemingly agreeing with the mage's logic. Noticing the shift in opinion, the man who made the accusation starts to break into a cold sweat. Soon after, they completely change their stance, convinced that the mage is right. Although he finds their reaction strange, Ian decides it's time to focus on his main objective. Turning to the leader, he asks for leave to go and search for his kidnapped sister. At that moment, the leader asks if the man was attacked because he was one of the kidnappers, but the accused cowers in fear, vehemently denying any involvement in the kidnapping. Giving an order to one of his men, the leader instructs them to keep a close watch on the accused. With the situation resolved, he turns to Ian and apologizes for taking up his precious time. Then, as compensation, he offers his group's help in finding the girl. The scene cuts to a pier at sunset, where two people are seen escaping in a small boat. Following the clues, Ian runs with the group of men towards the indicated location. Upon arriving at the pier, one of the men points to the boat that is already moving away. Seeing the kidnappers escape, the men become completely furious with the situation. Observing the situation, Ian considers that with the sun setting, it will be dangerous to pursue them by boat. At that, the group's leader gets his men's attention with a shout. With a clenched fist, he prepares to give an order, leaving Ian curious about what will happen next. In a fervent speech, he motivates everyone to prepare the boats to pierce the darkness and save a soul. Shouting in unison, the men reply that the Order of St. James protects the weak, and they will follow with pride. Hearing that, Ian realizes they are an order of knights, and is genuinely impressed by their ideals. Trying to be cautious, he warns the leader about the danger of going by boat, but the man just smiles and asks him to speak casually. Completely embarrassed, Ian replies that he is already speaking casually, amusing the leader even more. Ignoring the conversation, he reveals his plan to use a hook to pull the kidnapper's boat back. Eyes wide, the leader is shocked to hear that the mage intends to pull the boat back by himself. Surprised by the plan, he asks how a shadow mage can also use water magic. Finding it all very strange, the man comments that battle mages usually use only one type of magic. Furthermore, he doubts that someone with basic level training could use any spell at all. Proving him wrong, Ian extends his hand and begins to invoke the river's power with a shout. Before the shocked men, a huge mass of water rises, answering the young mage's call. Manipulating the water, Ian creates a violent current that engulfs the kidnapper's boat. Seeing that power, the group's leader is shocked and says it surpasses any water shield he's ever seen. Meanwhile, the kidnappers on the boat panic as they feel the current change abruptly. Looking back, one of them is in complete disbelief as he sees the wave forming. Soon after, the force of the water throws the boat into the air, sending the two men flying. With the kidnappers defeated, the empty boat is brought back to the safety of the pier. With the situation resolved, the men from the group move to take the rescued girl away. Running towards him, his sister Lucy hugs him tightly, crying and screaming his name. Awkwardly, Ian just holds her as the group's leader scolds him for making her cry. Noticing her state, he tries to calm her down, saying she's been through a lot. He then gently hugs her to comfort her as she continues to sob on his shoulder. Completely exhausted, Ian sighs and thinks they need to go back to the inn and take a bath. But at that moment, he had no idea that a quiet bath was something he wouldn't be getting. Cutting to the city streets, two knights ride at high speed, shouting about an emergency. It was the son of the Lord of Riverville and a knight, ordering everyone to return to their homes immediately. Seeing the smoke on the horizon, they realize it definitely came from a battle. At that moment, the knight panics, thinking his lord's fears have come true. Rushing forward, he thinks the situation is bad enough without having to look after the young master. With an exhausted expression, he bemoans having to deal with yet another mess. Meanwhile, the smoke was coming from a cauldron where men were offering to wash Ian's back. Refusing their help, Ian sinks into the cauldron as the men cheerfully insist. Through the window of a nearby house, the commotion catches the attention of the person inside. Soon after, the two knights arrive on the scene and shout, asking what everyone is doing. As calm as can be, Ian replies that he's just taking a bath. Completely shocked, the young noble and his knight can't believe what they're hearing. After all, imperial citizens rarely bathe in public, only on very special occasions. Seeing that the area is a mess, the young noble understands that something serious must have happened there. With his fists clenched, he approaches, demanding they explain everything in detail immediately. At the same moment, the leader of the knights steps forward and offers to explain the situation, but the young lord irritably cuts him off, saying he was asking the other one. Trying to justify the situation, the older knight whispers that he is a mage, leaving the young lord surprised. Realizing the lord's intention, the older knight just sighs with an expression of someone who already expected this. Introducing himself as the heir to House Kars, the young noble arrogantly orders Ian to get out of the bath and greet him. In this world, there's a tradition called the Dance of the Mages, a ritual where they use magic to enhance a performance. Over time, this dance evolved and became a fierce competition of magical power among the participants. In the end, the competition became so violent that no one cared about the dancing part anymore. Back in the present, Ian understands everything and realizes the noble probably expects him to perform this so-called dance. With a cold expression and his arms crossed, Ian simply refuses to obey. At this, the young lord is left completely speechless and stunned by the refusal. Immediately after, he explodes with rage and starts shouting, outraged by Ian's audacity. Staring at the boy, Ian leans on the edge of the cauldron and asks why he should do anything he says. Completely furious, the Lord orders his knight, Sir Hansen, to drag the mage out of the water by force. Watching the scene, Ian comments that the boy is a great actor, as he struggles to break free from the knight. Then, with a determined look, Ian prepares to resolve the situation his own way. Reacting to the accusation of being a fraud, Ian unleashes a powerful energy that surprises everyone. Faced with that demonstration, the young lord and his knight are completely terrified, not knowing what to do. Raising his hand, he commands with a shout for the surrounding objects to begin levitating. Immediately, several pieces of wood and a broom start floating in the air around them. At this, the knight rushes to apologize and begs the mage to stop. Heeding the request, the floating wood and broom fall back to the ground. With the situation resolved, Ian goes back to relaxing in his bath, believing it was enough to scare them off. But instead of fear, the young lord throws himself on the ground and starts having a crying fit. Seeing this, Ian is completely confused, not understanding why the child is crying so much. The next day, the scene changes to the interior of a grand castle. Inside, a voice thanks Ian for accepting the invitation for a chat. Remembering the previous day, Ian cringes as he hears the lord of the territory apologize for the trouble his son caused. Continuing the conversation, Baron Kaltz offers his sincere apologies, but Ian says he also overreacted a bit. Then, the lord changes the subject and asks about Ian's companion, who replies that she stayed at the inn. Meanwhile, at the inn, Lucy remained under the careful protection of the knight leader and his men. Hearing the answer, Baron Kaltz just observes the luxurious hall before continuing the conversation. He then politely asks for the name of the young mage's master, who promptly replies that it is Aledis. Confirming that she left for the west, Ian explains that her final destination is the Magic Academy. With a sudden look of astonishment, the Baron asks why they didn't go to the Duchy of Valgar or Roxlan. Not understanding the question, Ian asks him to explain further, and the Lord reveals that the situation has been quite tense lately. Hearing that the Duchy of Valgar has its sights set on Roxlan's lands, Ian's expression becomes visibly worried. With this revelation, the imminent possibility of a war between the two great duchies hangs in the air. Changing the subject, the Lord asks with a cunning look if Ian's destination is also to the south, but the mage denies it, explaining that he's heading east in search of the world's great mystery. Understanding the situation, the Baron says that in that case, he has a gift for the young man on his journey. The news that the Duchy of Valgar plans to attack Roxlan continues to echo in Ian's mind. At that moment, a richly detailed wooden chest is placed on the table, sparking the mage's curiosity. With a friendly smile, the noble encourages him to open the gift and see what's inside. Still a bit suspicious, Ian approaches and begins to lift the heavy lid of the chest. Looking at the contents, his eyes widen in complete and total surprise at what he sees. Inside the chest, he finds a wooden staff that belonged to an ancient aeromancer. Hearing that the weapon is called Wind Wanderer, Ian repeats the name in a low voice. Holding the new staff, he feels the weight of the wood in his hands for the first time. With the staff in hand, the Lord comments that the gift suits him perfectly. Analyzing the item, Ian thinks it looks like a normal staff, despite its history. Despite its simplicity, he smiles, pleased to have received such an unexpected gift. Thanking him profusely, he accepts the gift as an apology for the rudeness of the Baron's son. Leaving the castle behind, Ian promises that he will take very good care of his new equipment. On the way back, he hears Lucy's voice desperately shouting his name. Turning around, startled, he asks what happened to make her so upset. Running towards him, she grabs his arm and says that something terrible has happened. Not understanding a thing, he looks down at her hand, gripping his arm tightly. Then, she begs for his help as the image of a crow trapped in a cage appears. Seeing a crow in a cage, Ian looks confused by the situation while Lucy smiles beside him. Then, the Night Leader explains that some hunters caught the bird and were planning to eat it. Full of excitement, Lucy points to the bird and tries to forge a mystical connection with Ian. An awkward silence then hangs in the air as they watch the quiet crow. Turning to him with sparkling eyes, she insists their meeting is destiny. Ignoring the drama, Ian turns to the hunters and tells them to go ahead and eat it. Walking towards them, he tells Lucy to stop talking nonsense because he's the mage here. With a smile on his face, the hunter thanks him for the confirmation and gets ready to take the bird. In that same instant, a voice echoes in Ian's head, begging for its human master to save it. Running towards the hunter, he yells for them to wait a moment before doing anything. Placing the crow on the table, Ian asks what kind of creature it is, but the bird only asks for help. Insisting on the question, he tries to understand what this creature is while it begs to be saved. With a focused gaze, he realizes the bird doesn't seem to understand what he's asking. Trying to communicate, he asks the crow to be quiet for a second so he can help it. But the bird's panic continues, leaving Ian visibly irritated by the lack of cooperation. Yelling at the crow, Ian orders it to shut up since he already promised to help. Finally, the bird stops screaming and stares at him with its intense red eyes. With a slight smile, Ian realizes that although it doesn't understand his words, the crow can read the situation. Confused by the scene, the hunter asks if the mage was really talking to the bird. Celebrating, Lucy says she knew there was something special about that crow and asks to keep it. Seeing her excitement, the Night Leader comments that the young lady also has the gift of seeing the mystical. While the conversation flows freely, Ian focuses on bandaging the crow's injured wing. With the bandage done, he sits at the table with Lucy and the now recovered bird. Lucy then asks what he plans to do now that the crow is in his care. Reflecting for a moment, Ian thinks that if he returns it, the hunters will simply eat it. Suddenly, the crow climbs onto his arm and spreads its wings, trying to get his attention. The bird starts rubbing against him and begging not to be abandoned with those people. Despite feeling bothered by the insistence, he understands the small animal's desperation. With a sigh, he lets the crow climb onto his shoulder, accepting the new companion. Confirming to Lucy, he says he'll take the crow with them, at least for now. With her eyes sparkling with excitement, Lucy says they now need to name the crow. Suggesting Obsidian, she comments that its eyes are beautiful like the stone, making Ian feel awkward. With the new name, Ian pets the bird's head and says that from now on, his name will be Oberon. Immediately, Oberon puffs out his chest and squawks for them to bring offerings and bow in his favor. As they talk, Lucy suggests they travel with the group of knights for more safety. With a worried expression, she argues it would be much safer than the two of them traveling alone. Thinking about the knights, Ian agrees that with them around, no bandits would dare approach. But one detail worries him. After all, they don't know if the group's destination is the same as theirs. Just then, the Night Leader approaches and asks what's weighing on his mind. Sitting with them, he says that traveling alone with a young woman is dangerous, even for a mage. Then he leans forward and proposes they make a deal that benefits everyone. With a confident smile, he explains that his group is on their way to Count Katina's mansion to hunt a monster. Hearing the word monster, Ian becomes visibly tense and curious about what's to come. Without giving more details, the knight just looks at the window before continuing his proposal. With a serious look, he asks directly if Ian has ever heard of a creature called a manticore. As he speaks, an image of a furious manticore flashes across the scene. A notorious beast. This creature is known to live only for the kill. Confirming he's heard of it, Ian immediately asks if he wants help capturing it, but the knight denies this, assuring him he has no intention of putting him in danger. With a sly look, he adds that, of course, he wouldn't stop him if he offered. Hearing the veiled proposal, Ian falls silent for a moment to think. Resting his hand on the table, he prepares to end the conversation for good. Then he simply says he's out, causing the night leader to ask him to wait. Clarifying the situation, he assures Ian he's not asking for help with the hunt, which piques Ian's curiosity. He begins to explain that his order was founded by a command from the celestial god. Continuing his story, he reveals that when they announced the mission to capture the manticore, something happened. With a tired expression, he explains that the local priests forced a mage to join them. Because of this, he believes the other mage is offended and asks Ian to appease the situation. Analyzing the proposal, Ian understands that a request from another mage would carry more weight than one from a knight. Considering the proposal, he concludes that it's worth calming down an angry mage in exchange for the group's protection. With the deal sealed, Ian looks up at the inn's ceiling for a moment before confirming. Then, with Oberon on his shoulder, he announces with conviction that he will go with them on their journey. The scene cuts to a sunny landscape, showing that the journey with the knights was incredibly comfortable. During the trip, they discover that the members of the Knights of Santiago are all decent people. Walking with his new staff, Ian reflects that the journey alongside them was completely stress-free. But if he had to point out a single complaint, it would be about the knights around the campfire. While he was eating a skewer, one of the knights would enthusiastically call him over to talk. With a gleam in his eyes, the man would insistently invite him to study the Holy Scriptures. Other knights would also join the invitation, all very excited to learn together. Refusing the offer, he would continue eating next to Lucy, leaving the knights indignant. With an expression of pure annoyance, he realized they were pushing religious recruitment on him. Then, the group's leader approaches and comments that it's a shame Ian doesn't want to join. He adds that if the mage could hear the voice of God, he could become a cleric of the order. Upon hearing about the voice of God, Ian becomes thoughtful and starts to ponder that possibility. Then he wonders if, should he manage to speak with God, he could ask about his reincarnation. Reading the scriptures by the campfire, one of the knights named Digtree remains focused. Driven by curiosity, Ian approaches and asks if he can still join the studies. Sitting next to him, the two begin to read the holy book together by the firelight. Meanwhile, Oberon sleeps peacefully on his master's shoulder, without a care in the world. With Lucy also asleep beside him, a mysterious voice praises Ian's good posture. Thanking him for the compliment, he suddenly stops reading as he realizes something is very wrong. Looking at the knight, he asks why he's acting strangely, and mentions the compliment. Completely terrified, Digtree denies saying anything and asks whose voice he heard. Pausing to think, Ian begins to suspect that the voice he heard might not have been human. Then, the same voice returns with an amused tone, adding to the mystery in the air. In that same instant, the knight beside him is thrown aside by an invisible force. With a hand to his ear, Ian hears the voice ask if it sounds like something other than a human. Pointing to the sky, Ian screams and accuses the mysterious voice of being a god. The divine entity's vague response only adds to the mage's confusion and frustration. Taking the chance, he starts asking all the questions that have haunted him for so long. In total desperation, he asks why he was reincarnated in this world and what the status window is. But the only answer he gets is a mocking laugh, which makes him even more furious. With his eyes closed, he seems to accept his fate in a brief moment of calm. Then, a deep silence falls over the forest as the divine presence vanishes. When he turns around, he realizes that all the knights, including Digtree, have also disappeared. Completely alone by the campfire, he wonders if everyone simply left. Then, a vein pops on his forehead as he realizes he's been completely ignored and abandoned. Grabbing Digtree, who reappears out of nowhere, he screams for the god to come back and answer his questions. The rest of the group returns and tries to calm him down, not understanding what's happening to the mage. After that outburst, he decides to dive headfirst into studying the sacred scriptures. With fire in his eyes, he devours the book, hoping to speak with that god again. As a result of his efforts, a new skill appears in his status window. With the new skill, the status window congratulates him on his success. Pointing at the screen, Ian reads that a punishment was delivered swiftly and becomes confused. The status window then instructs him to become more interested in the god by studying and understanding more. The message continues, saying that the more interest he shows, the happier the ruler of the world will become. With a vein popping on his forehead, he gets angry realizing the god who gave him these skills is childish. He understands that he was simply thrown into this world to be the toy of a bored entity. Completely frustrated, he realizes he's not a high enough level for a direct conversation yet. So he decides he has no choice but to keep playing the game. Standing up, He decides he needs to find more followers and collect more points to level up. Looking at the starry sky, he reaffirms to himself that he must master the divine arts. A few days later, the tranquility of their journey is shattered by a surprise attack. During the confrontation, the knights fight bravely against a group of skilled assassins. Even the knight's leader joins the battle, facing one of the enemies head-on. In the midst of the chaos, one of the assassins falls defeated to the ground, right at someone's feet. Worried, the knight leader approaches and asks if the mage is okay after the attack. With a smile, Ian and Lucy strike a pose for an imaginary photo, confirming that everything is fine. He adds that the knights defeated all the enemies before he could even do anything. Assuring him he's fine, Ian asks if the knight leader was hurt as well. With a confident smile, the man replies that he may be old, but he wouldn't lose to those worms. Praising his strength, Ian mentions he heard the leader used to be a mercenary. With pride, the knight confirms this, saying he was quite famous in his youth. He explains that he uses the alias Elder because many idiots try to challenge him when they hear his real name. Hearing this, Ian realizes the knight's name must be famous enough to intimidate people. Raising his sword, the leader announces to his men that they have successfully defeated the bandits. In response, the other knights celebrate the victory with a lively battle cry. At that moment, one of the knights approaches and informs them that the path splits up ahead. He points out that the path to the east leads to the Count's castle, where they need to go. Meanwhile, the path to the west leads directly to the forest where the manticore usually appears. Turning to Ian, the leader says that the forest is also where the other mage is living. With a smile, he pats Ian on the head and urges them to get moving. Interrupting him, Ian asks them to wait a moment while he thinks of a plan. He decides that he and Lucy will find the other mage first, and only then will they head to the castle. With a worried expression, he asks if she'll be okay going on ahead alone. Assuring him she's not a child anymore, she says she'll get there in a flash and runs off. With a radiant smile, she waves goodbye to Ian as she heads down the forest path. Watching her leave, he and the knight leader hope she'll be all right on her own. With a determined look, Ian focuses on his mission so he can reunite with his sister as soon as possible. Turning to the knight, he reassures him that he'll go after her soon and focuses on the task at hand. Getting back on the path, they head towards the forest to find this mysterious mage. With a smile, the leader asks if Ian is mentally prepared for what's to come. He explains that mages are a difficult bunch and that the Sacred Order really annoyed the witch. Confused, Ian wonders why they have to clean up the mess the Sacred Order made. Awkwardly, the knight begins to explain the reason for this embarrassing situation. In a good-humored way, he says it's because the Sacred Order is their boss's hobby. Ending the conversation, he assures him that the witch will forgive them as soon as she sees Ian's face. Realizing this is the first time he's met a mage other than his master, Ian braces himself for what's ahead. Arriving in the forest, they come across a sinister cabin from which a strange energy emanates in all directions. Inside, several dead animals are scattered across the floor, surrounded by the same greenish smoke. With her back to the entrance, an old woman in a pointed hat stirs a cauldron, commenting that the mixture is boiling nicely. In a flashback, the same witch is seen talking to members of the Sacred Order who asked for her help. But with a serious look, the group's leader reminds her that they have protected this forest like a sanctuary countless times. Back in the present, the witch scowls with pure contempt as she remembers that conversation. Then she says that if they want her help, they'd better at least pretend to like her food. She dares them not to run away after smelling what's bubbling inside the cauldron. With a frightening smile, the witch urges them to try her spirit dumplings as soon as possible. Looking at the mage's hut, Ian wonders if she's an herb specialist. On the way, the Knight Commander explains that Manny Campbell is a famous botanical sorceress. Besides controlling plants, she's also known for creating lethal drugs like the ensnaring mist. Since they need a potent poison to hunt the manticore, her help is simply perfect. As they get closer, a strange smell fills the air, making the knights cover their noses. But Ian recognizes the scent and realizes he's smelled it somewhere before. Stopping in front of the door, greenish smoke seeps through the cracks as they prepare to enter. With an evil laugh, the mage opens the door and says she was waiting for Santiago's warriors. Covering his nose, the Knight Commander calls her by name, visibly bothered by the smell. With a creepy smile, she's glad they made it and invites them in. Then, she points to a cauldron and invites them to enjoy the feast she has prepared. Inside the hut, various herbs and strange ingredients hang everywhere. Upon tasting the food, the knights immediately feel nauseous from the horrible taste. Commenting to the mage, the commander says she didn't need to prove her power that way, but she simply replies that if they aren't her guests, they are free to leave. With a disapproving look, the Knight Commander watches the situation without a word. Meanwhile, the other knights continue to feel sick, coughing and trying not to vomit. The smell of the food is so strong that one of them can't take it and ends up vomiting on the floor. Watching the scene, the mage wonders if maybe she overdid the recipe a bit, but to her surprise, she sees Ian eating the soup calmly, as if it were nothing. With a look of pleasure, he devours the mage's food, which is full of garlic. Noticing his reaction, she approaches him and asks if he's feeling all right. With a contagious smile, Ian replies that the food is simply delicious. Completely shocked, the mage can't believe someone actually liked her cooking. Pointing with his spoon, he especially praises the garlic, saying it's very good. Next, he scoops up a whole clove of garlic with his spoon and eats it with relish. Seeing this, the mage and the surrounding knights are completely flabbergasted. Shouting for him to stop, she approaches angrily, leaving Ian confused by her reaction. With a look of disbelief, she says that in her 40 years, she has never seen a freak like him. Impressed, the mage approaches and asks for the name of the young man before her. Upon hearing his name is Ian Aletus Raven, she is shocked to recognize the name Aletus. Her eyes wide, she points at him and starts connecting the dots. Then she asks him directly if he is the disciple of the famous pyromancer Aletus. The scene cuts to the hut at night, where the mage apologizes for being so difficult. As compensation, she serves a delicious feast for everyone present. Still surprised, Ian eats the new food and thinks the chicken stew from before was good. Sitting at the table, the mage asks if they're really going to hunt a manticore. With a serious expression, she warns them the task won't be easy at all. She explains that Count Katina hired hunters to capture the beast, but they were all slaughtered. Assuring her he's prepared, the knight commander asks if she has ever killed a manticore before. With an air of superiority, he replies that he's killed a few in his youth. Turning to Ian, the mage asks what he plans to do to help with the hunt. She continues, saying that if Aletus trained him, he must already be a full-fledged mage. With Oberon on his shoulder, Ian is encouraged to lend his expertise to the knights for the mission. Remembering his master's words, Ian understands that every mage needs to build bonds with others. With a smile, Aletus advises him to never underestimate the weight of the mark he bears. Thinking about the situation, he concludes that even though he doesn't need to hunt the manticore, refusing could be a problem. After all, the mage's circle is a powerful organization, and he doesn't want a bad reputation. With his arms crossed, he reflects that if that happens, he won't be able to face his master anymore. With a determined look, he makes an important decision for his future as a mage. Then, to the knight's surprise, he stands up and says he accepts the mission. With Oberon on his shoulder, Ian confirms he will go with them to hunt the fearsome manticore. The next day, the group ventures into the dense, dark forest in search of the creature. Walking beside the knight commander, Ian feels the air around them is strangely heavy. Suddenly, Oberon flies ahead and shouts that he's found what they were looking for. Returning to his shoulder, the bird points with its head and says, "The manticore is in that direction." Seeing him stop walking, the commander asks if something is wrong, but Ian reassures him. Impressed by the skill, the knight comments that the crow has an incredible ability. Meanwhile, Ian focuses on making sure Oberon gets used to speaking like a human. Sensing an incredible bloodlust, the mage comments on the creature's presence in the forest. Seizing the moment, Ian asks if, since the manticore is a monster, he couldn't just calm it down. With Oberon on his shoulder, he suggests using his communication skill to solve the problem peacefully. Hearing the idea, the knight commander becomes thoughtful, but seems to doubt it will work. Interrupting the conversation, the mage states that a manticore is not the kind of creature you can reason with. Ignoring her skepticism, Ian asks what she knows about the summoning arts, irritating the old woman. With a disdainful look, she promises that if he succeeds, she'll tell Aletus all about his nonsense. Realizing the veiled threat, Ian becomes visibly annoyed by the mage's childish attitude. At that moment, one of the knights shouts and points ahead, warning of imminent danger. Turning quickly, Ian follows the pointed direction, preparing for whatever is coming. Before the group, a pair of glowing eyes emerges from the darkness, revealing the manticore's terrifying presence. In the middle of the dark forest, the group halts, sensing a sinister presence in the treetops. Immediately, Ian pulls Mani Campbell close, telling her and Oberon to stay near. The elder then turns with a serious look, preparing the group's strategy. Giving the order, he explains to his men that their weapons are poisoned for the fight. Showing the arrows in detail, the poison prepared by Mani slowly drips from the tips. In that same instant, the elder raises his hand and gives the signal to attack. Watching intently, Ian observes the start of the attack without a word. A moment later, the poisoned arrows are fired at high speed toward the monster. Hitting their mark, the arrows strike the mysterious creature hidden in the darkness. But to everyone's surprise, the arrows hit the monster's skin and simply bounce off, causing no damage. Realizing the attack failed, the elder turns to Ian, who also looks on, completely baffled. Not knowing what to do, Dictree turns to the elder, who puts a hand to his head, having no answer. Taking advantage of the group's confusion, the creature finally emerges from the darkness, revealing itself to them. Staring at the monster, Ian and Oberon freeze for a moment. Before them, one of the knights is already on the ground as Ian realizes there's no time to apply more poison. Seeing he has no other choice, Ian clutches the pouch on his belt and makes a decision. He then turns and shouts the creature's name, a manticore, surprising everyone. At the warning, the elder and his knights look at the boy who has stepped in front of them. Even Manny Campbell turns her head, incredulous that the young man actually took the initiative. Moving away from the group, Ian walks alone toward the monster, which watches him intently. Curious about the human's courage, the manticore leans in, seemingly willing to talk. Keeping his cool, Ian raises a staff with an apple on its tip and attempts a peaceful approach. In a comical scene, he tries to act tough, telling the creature to leave, but it just finds it amusing. The manticore considers the human sensible, while Ian feels completely humiliated by its reaction. Back to reality, the creature approaches and tells him to drop the formalities. With a piercing gaze, the monster asks directly what the human wants from it. Ian then stares back with his blue eyes, ready to reveal his true intention. Letting his imagination run wild, he sees himself holding the manticore's head as a trophy. But instead of a furious roar, a loud laugh from the creature echoes throughout the forest. The manticore seems to have liked his honesty, leaving Ian completely confused by its reaction. With a macabre smile, the manticore proposes that Ian, the mage, join it in an alliance. Shocked by the proposal, Ian can hardly believe what he just heard. The monster then shows him a vision of itself devouring any enemy that crosses their path. Then, another image shows Ian receiving all the glory and wealth he can handle. And finally, the creature offers to kill all the women for him after he's used them. Satisfied with its own proposal, the manticore assumes a more humanoid form and licks its lips. Back in the clearing, Ian remains silent for a moment before giving his answer. Taking a step forward, he spits in disgust on the ground right in front of the creature's paw. Right after, he raises his middle finger and curses the monster with all his might. Beside him, one of the knights is completely stunned by the boy's bold attitude. Facing the challenge, the manticore's shadow grows over Ian, who braces himself for what's next. Without wasting a moment, the monster strikes from above with its spiked tail, aiming for the mage. Absolutely furious, the manticore screams that the fight is going to be much more fun now. In the midst of the chaos, Ian shouts a word in another language as a hand grabs his shoulder. Seeing the situation, Manny Campbell reacts and yells a command to her staff. Obeying the command, Manny's staff slams into the ground, creating a wave of energy. Immediately after, a seed on the ground sprouts and grows at an absurd speed. In a matter of seconds, the plant becomes a giant vine creature that holds the manticore in place. Seeing the scale of the spell, the elder's eyes go wide, unable to believe the old woman's power. Before them, the giant carnivorous plant completely dominates the clearing, leaving everyone in shock. At this, the elder turns furiously to Mani and asks what the hell she just did, but she replies with perfect calm that she's devouring the manticore, along with the knights who were nearby. Annoyed by their concern, she yells that the knights are grown men, and the focus should be on killing the monster. Hearing her cold reply, the elder is left speechless, paralyzed by the sorceress's indifference. Then Ian takes a step back, preparing to jump into action and resolve the situation. Without a second thought, he runs toward the giant plant while the others scream for him to wait. Right behind him, the elder also runs, trying to catch up to the boy and asking if everyone is okay. Looking at his master, Ian is worried but keeps moving toward the danger. After the rush, the silhouettes of the group gather safely, but the tension still hangs in the air. But suddenly, Ian's expression changes to pure panic as he realizes something terrible. Lying on the ground, the knight Dictree is in agony, with fatal wounds all over his body. In his arms, the elder comforts him as he apologizes for letting the manticore escape. Watching the scene, Ian wears an expression of deep sadness and helplessness. With a clenched fist, he accepts that everyone there did the best they could in the situation. At that, he remembers the happy moments he spent with Dictree, never imagining death would come so quickly. Remembering when they studied together, Ian recalls the friendship he built with the knight. In that moment, the harsh reality of this world finally begins to sink in. After all, this is a place where monsters and wars are a part of everyone's daily life. He realized that death, once only seen in stories, was now right in front of him, and this fantasy had become a real and terrifying nightmare before his very eyes. So, Ian walks slowly toward the group gathered around Dictree's body. Getting closer, he kneels beside the knight and calls his name. With a mysterious smile, He asks if Dictree remembers what he taught him about believing with all his heart. For if faith is true, the heavens will surely hear your prayers. With tears in his eyes, Dictree smiles and agrees with the young mage's words. Proposing a joint prayer, Ian begins to emit a strong energy that envelops the entire group. With a fixed gaze, he asks the heavens if they are watching what is happening down below. Reminding them that their biggest fan is dying, he begs them to do something to save him. At that moment, a mysterious voice answers his call, leaving Ian completely surprised. Then the voice asks if this is what he desires, suggesting they try something together. Right after, an explosion of energy engulfs the entire forest, blinding everyone for an instant. As the light dissipates, the elder and the knights stare at Ian, not understanding what happened. Continuing the spell, he focuses all the energy directly into the wounded knight's hands. But as he looks at his own hands, he's astonished by the power he just used. The scene shifts to an unknown place, where Dictree finds himself kneeling before a massive celestial castle. Before him, a woman with blonde hair and white robes descends from the heavens, leaving him completely stunned. Unable to believe his eyes, he stammers and asks if she is truly a goddess. He then bows in reverence as the goddess lands gently on the ground before him. Still on his knees, he realizes he must have reached paradise after his death. But the goddess interrupts him with a gentle smile, telling him he still has work to do. Confused by her statement, Dictree looks up and repeats her words, not understanding at all. Reaching her hand toward him, she explains that her will must be spread throughout the world. Touching the knight's head, she then instructs him to help the weak and ensure their happiness. And as a final command, she asks him to help her apostle on Earth, the young mage Ian. At that exact moment, Dictree's eye snaps open, pulling him back to reality. In his line of sight, he sees the elder and the other knights shouting his name, completely relieved. Sitting up on the ground, he looks around, completely disoriented and with no injuries on his body. Above him, Ian calls his name again, confirming that he is indeed alive and back. With a victorious smirk on his face, the mage then asks how it feels to be back from the dead. Reacting emotionally, Dictree grabs Ian's staff, who becomes completely embarrassed by the scene. With tears in his eyes, he asks if the mage only saved him because of an order from the goddess. Not knowing what to say, Ian just gives a sheepish smile, confirming the knight's suspicion. Showing how it all happened, a vision reveals that he truly used the goddess's power to perform the miracle. Kneeling before the mage, Dictree asks how he knew, and Ian replies that it was because he still had work to do. Having a flashback, the knight remembers the goddess's exact words in his vision, shocked by the coincidence. At that same instant, Dictree brings a hand to his mouth, finally understanding the young mage's true identity. He then bows in total devotion, calling Ian apostle as the mage bursts out laughing. Watching from a distance, the other knights comment that the boy is a prodigy, but they decide to keep an eye on him. In the full scene, Dictree remains kneeling before the mage while the rest of the group just watches. Meanwhile, the elder comments to Mani that they're quite cheerful for people who almost died. With renewed spirits, the elder then gathers the knights to resume the manticore hunt. Interrupting the plan, Ian announces that he will send Oberon ahead to search for the monster. Without hesitation, the crow takes flight and departs on a reconnaissance mission through the forest. Seeing the mage's confidence, the elder wears a confused expression, not understanding what just happened. Recalling the offense, Ian knows the manticore isn't the type to let things go. With a determined look, he declares that they need to finish that monster once and for all. Meanwhile, a scream of despair suddenly echoes from a nearby village. Attacking without warning, the manticore appears in the middle of the town, spreading chaos among the residents. In the midst of the confusion, a young man and his father run desperately, trying to escape. But in the rush, the father's hand slips, and he falls backward onto the path. Desperate, the son turns and shouts for his father, who has been left behind alone. Powerless to do anything, he watches, paralyzed with fear as the scene unfolds before him. Standing over the fallen man, the manticore prepares to deliver the final blow with a cruel smile. But suddenly, the son places himself in front of his father, interrupting the monster's attack. Mustering all his courage, the young man yells for the creature to leave the town. Armed only with a rake, he faces the monster, ready to defend his father. Amused by the situation, the manticore asks if that human is really his father, surprising the young man. The creature then makes a cruel offer, telling the boy to kill his own father and bring him his head. As a reward, the monster promises to spare all the other humans in the village if he obeys. Shouting that he would never accept the proposal, the young man refuses to obey the monster's command. With a cruel smile, the manticore tells him to bear the consequences of his choice. The creature then lunges forward with a swift strike toward the two humans. But at the last second, The father shoves his son aside and prepares for the worst. Suddenly, a blade appears and blocks the manticore's blow before it can hit its target. The impact then throws the creature back, preventing the deadly attack. Seizing the opportunity, a mysterious warrior rushes at high speed toward the monster. He then lands a powerful blow right on the creature's face, forcing it to retreat. Realizing who has arrived, the young man shouts the name of the Holy Order of Santiago, who appeared to save the day. Leading the charge, the elder orders all his knights to prepare for battle. In that instant, the knights advance together in combat formation. Surrounding the enemy, they position themselves to attack the manticore from all sides. Furious with the interference, the creature screams at the knights, who do not back down. At that moment, an arrow flies out of nowhere and strikes the monster square in the face. From a distance, Ian observes the scene and comments that the creature's resistance is pathetic. Screaming in fury, the manticore tells the mage to shut his mouth once and for all. But Ian just taunts the monster, saying its bark is worse than its bite. Losing its patience, the creature charges with full force toward the boy. The monster rushes at high speed, ready to crush its target. Despite this, Ian remains standing in the same spot with a confident smile on his face. Upon getting very close, the creature stops abruptly, not understanding what happened. Realizing the trap, the manticore glares at Ian and Manny, who have appeared in front of it. Manny Campbell then begins to cast a plant spell once again. In the same instant, an image of the magic plant appears in the air, activating the power. Trapping the monster, vines erupt from the ground and wrap around the creature's entire body. At that exact moment, the elder yells for his knights to attack with everything they've got. Following the order, the knights throw a flammable liquid onto a containment net. They then cast the soaked net over the monster, which cannot break free. Completely immobilized, the manticore struggles, tired of all the group's tricks. Seeing that the plan worked, Manny Campbell turns and yells that it's now Ian's turn. Hearing the signal, Ian opens his eyes and prepares for the final attack. Pointing directly at the target, he shouts a command and unleashes his spell. In that same instant, an immense power manifests, creating a large amount of fire. A column of fire then erupts from the ground and hits the manticore head-on. As it diminishes in intensity, the fire consumes the creature completely with one last scream. With the attack finished, Ian silently observes the result, waiting for the smoke to clear. With the battle over, the village finally returns to a day of peace and quiet. The villagers bow to the heroes in gratitude, but the heroes insist they were just doing their duty. While the others receive thanks, Ian stands apart from the group, just watching the scene. Seeing this, Oberon asks if his master is being left out, but Ian tells him to shut up. Noticing their frightened looks, Ian realizes the villagers are afraid of him for incinerating the manticore. Suddenly, someone approaches him from behind, getting his attention. Turning around, he sees the father and son he saved, who have come to thank him personally for his help. With a surprised expression, he replies that he didn't do it expecting any thanks. A moment later, the elder comes up from behind and calls his name, interrupting the conversation. In a comical scene, the elder insists on thanking him, while Ian tells him to stop the flattery. With a smile on his face, the elder observes the boy, noting what a powerful mage he is, with a rare personality. Beside him, Ian keeps a serious expression as the elder concludes the boy will have a great future. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps draws everyone's attention in the ruined square. As they get closer, a new group of knights asks if they were the ones who captured the manticore. Confirming their suspicion, the elder asks who they are, and the newcomers introduce themselves as knights from the castle. Receiving the unexpected invitation, Ian doesn't understand why he's being summoned to the castle. Soon after, he learns that Count Katina himself has requested their presence at his residence. Arriving there, they are received with all the honors of brave warriors in a luxurious hall. On the table, a full banquet awaits the group as a reward for their bravery. Leading the dinner, Count Katina toasts the group, praising their magnificent display of justice. Speaking with the nobleman, the elder humbly says it was nothing special, just their job. Nearby, the Count's knights comment with embarrassment that they wish they had such capable men at the castle. Turning to Mani, the Count informs him that he has already notified the guild of the mission's success. Then he turns to Ian, mentioning that his niece told him about the young mage's master. But Ian is so focused on enjoying the food that he doesn't even notice they're talking to him. Beside him, Oberon tries to get his attention, warning him that his master is being called. Realizing he's being ignored in favor of a crow, the Count freezes with rage at the boy's audacity. Finally satisfied, Ian lifts his head and notices the Count is staring at him. Completely nonchalant, he apologizes and says he wasn't listening because the food was so good. Regaining his composure, the Count reveals the true reason for the invitation, saying he heard Ian took very good care of his niece. Opening the chest, Ian is momentarily blinded by the light coming from inside. Inside the chest, he finds a golden magic scroll shining brightly. Unrolling the item, the magical text explains that the spell is activated when the scroll is torn. With the scroll in his hands, he understands the magic takes effect the moment he rips it. Impressed with the item's quality, he notices that even the writing seems to be high class. Seeing the mage's reaction, the Count asks if he liked the gift that was prepared especially for him. With a smile on his face, Ian thanks him immensely for the precious gift he just received, but the Count explains that it's the least he could do for them bringing Lucy back safely. A moment later, he snaps his fingers to get the attention of someone who was waiting. Instantly, a door slowly opens in the corner of the dining hall, and from the doorway emerges Lucy, now dressed in noble attire and with a smile on her face. Seeing her appearance, Ian can barely hold back his laughter and wonders what the hell she's wearing. Even the Count is surprised and asks where she got that weird hat. Completely embarrassed, Lucy doesn't know what to say and feels awkward in front of everyone. Turning to the mage, she finally greets him and asks if he's been well. Still a bit awkward, Ian returns her greeting, confirming it's been a while since they've seen each other. At the table, the elder teases the mage, asking if the girl is his girlfriend, but Ian immediately denies it. After the meal, the Count calls Ian over for a talk and says he has a proposal for him. With a serious look, he reveals that he intends to get revenge for his niece, leaving Lucy surprised. He then asks for Ian's help on the journey, wanting to borrow the mage's strength for his mission. Processing this information, Ian understands that the scroll was an advance payment for his help. Recalling the battle, he thinks he just needs to provide magical support, just like he did against the Manticore. Imagining the future, he pictures himself sitting on a golden throne, with rewards coming from both the Count and Lucy. His decision made, he faces the Count and Lucy, who are anxiously awaiting his answer. Declaring his allegiance, he accepts the proposal and says he will accompany them on their journey. 3 days later, the group prepares to leave the castle, but the Count is not present. Outside, Lucy asks them to visit the Talion fiefdom again someday to be welcomed as they deserve. Shaking hands, the elder bids farewell to the mage and the girl, looking forward to their reunion. In a comical scene, it's revealed that the number of the Count's knights dropped drastically after he recruited the group. Thanking him for everything, the elder says goodbye to Ian, who responds in kind. Making an invitation, the elder suggests that Ian visit Triniaro Island someday. With a smile, he explains that the island is in the Coral Sea and that he should just look for Salvador. Surprised by the name, Ian asks if that's his real name, and the elder agrees. With a solemn air, he formally introduces himself as Salvador of House Orcus. Hearing the name, Lucy's eyes widen as she realizes who they've been traveling with. She immediately recognizes him as Salvador, the White Wolf, a legendary figure. Seeing that Ian doesn't understand, Lucy is surprised he's never heard of the White Wolf. She then explains that the White Wolf's mercenaries served the former emperor directly. So impressed by his deeds, the emperor granted him the title and privilege of swordmaster. Shocked by the revelation, Lucy points at the warrior, unable to believe she's been alongside a legend. With a modest smile, Salvador confirms his identity, revealing himself to be a true swordmaster. Shrugging, Ian replies that he's not interested in that at all. While Lucy freaks out over the revelation, Salvador is confused by the mage's reaction. Laughing at the situation, Salvador comments that this is so typical of him, leaving Ian even more confused. Remembering the challenges he receives, he knows that many consider him just a legend of the past. With a smile on his face, he just says it's no big deal, trying to end the conversation. Soon after, he and Mani say their goodbyes, mentioning they're leaving and to send their regards to Aletus. With exaggerated drama, Dicktree grabs Ian's staff, who is losing patience with the farewell. Stepping aside, Salvador calls Ian for one last talk before he leaves. Shaking hands, the two seal a pact of mutual respect and friendship. With a smile, Ian says that as soon as things calm down, he's heading to the ruins of Trifaro. Smiling back, Salvador says they'll definitely meet again in the future. After the farewell, a new day begins, marking the start of a new journey. The scene shifts to the castle courtyard, where a banner with the noble crest waves in the wind. Before an army of knights, the Count, now in full armor, prepares for the expedition. With a determined look, he hears his niece call out to him, ready to lead her revenge. With tears in her eyes, Lucy begs her uncle to punish her mother's killer. Hearing her plea, the Count remembers the culprit, a man named Graham. In his thoughts, he recalls how Graham killed his sister and tried to force a marriage with Lucy. And all this just to use his niece as a shield and marry her off to one of his vassals. With a look of pure rage, the Count swears he'll have a serious talk with Lucy when this is all over. Facing his troops, he raises his fist and promises to bring the hated avenger to justice. Raising his arms, he yells for everyone to follow him into the coming battle. The scene shifts to a military camp at night, where the army prepares for war. Around a campfire, a giant pot boils with a very strange content. Seeing this, Lucy and the knights ask Ian what the hell he's doing. Curious, she asks if they're going to eat the spoons, thinking it's some kind of weird soup. From a distance, two knights whisper that the mage is making spoon soup. Annoyed by their ignorance, Ian explains he's just sterilizing the spoons. Confused by the term, Lucy asks what sterilize means, having never heard the word before. Turning to her, Ian replies that it's a kind of mystery she wouldn't understand. Hearing the word, the two knights look at each other, confused, repeating that it's a mystery. Sitting by the fire, Ian continues his work while Lucy watches him in silence. Suddenly, the same knights approach with 2 pieces of meat and ask him to boil it for them too. Losing his patience, Ian explodes and yells that he already told them it's not a soup. The scene pulls back to show the camp at night, with soldiers resting around the campfires. After finishing their meal, Lucy calls Ian over to talk, saying she was thinking about something. She then says she was thinking about his reward, remembering when he helped her in the past. Explaining the situation, she says she was going to give him gold, but he already got a lot from her uncle. So, after thinking hard about what would make him happy, she finally found the perfect gift. Showing him the reward, she reveals the magic sword Anorasil, a gift from a fairy to the first Baron of Talion. Recounting the legend, she says the Baron fell in love with the fairy and became the savior of the Fey Kingdom. Holding the mage's hands, she finishes the story, leaving Ian completely flustered by the scene. In a comical moment, Ian asks why her family are still just barons if they have such a powerful sword. Annoyed by the question, Lucy replies that the story is over 400 years old. With a smirk on his face, Ian asks what else there is to tell, making her even more nervous. Continuing the story, she reveals that the sword Anorasil is buried in the first Baron's tomb. Upon hearing the news, Ian is completely shocked while Lucy bursts out laughing. Then she explains that to get the sword, they'll have to dig up her ancestor's tomb. Processing this, Ian can't believe the descendant is just going to dig up a tomb and give away the treasure. Joking about the situation, he asks if she treats her ancestor's tomb like a time capsule. Soon after, he suggests she should use such a valuable sword to help her own family. Saying it would be better than being used by people who only care about her title, Ian leaves her speechless. Regaining her composure, she says she hasn't reclaimed anything yet, but now she has a chance to fight. With clenched fists, she states that he deserves something as valuable as the help he gave. Suddenly standing up, she yells that this is why she's giving him her family's heirloom. Angry, she calls him an idiot and runs off, leaving the mage behind, calling her name. Putting a hand to his head, he realizes he might have been a little too harsh. At that moment, one of the knights approaches from behind and calls the mage over for a talk. Coming closer, the knight informs him that the Count has a new request for him. The scene then shifts to a full moon night. Armed with a rake, a man yells at 3 knights in the middle of the night, telling the thieves to go away. But the knights just mock the man, demanding 3 chickens to leave him alone. Taunting the man, one of the knights pokes him, saying he can't fight on an empty stomach. Suddenly, the 3 of them look up with pure panic on their faces. Pointing to the top of a tree, one of them recognizes the mage's crow, which watches them in silence. Right after, the crow starts to caw, announcing that its master has arrived. Seeing the crow talk, the knights are completely paralyzed, not understanding a thing. Just then, a figure approaches from behind them, and they slowly turn around. Coming face to face with the mage, the knights wear expressions of absolute terror. Then, with a furious glare, Ian appears and asks what the hell they think they're doing. The scene shifts to the Count's tent, where 2 candles light the dark space. Sitting across from the mage, the Count says he has a favor to ask. He clears his throat, seeming to hesitate before speaking, which makes Ian curious about the request. Then he reveals that he wants Ian to stop the mercenaries from looting the city. Surprised by the request, Ian asks if the knights wouldn't be better suited for the task. Explaining the situation, the Count says the knights are all comrades and cover up each other's crimes, and it's all to maintain their image as model soldiers in front of their superiors. Meanwhile, Lucy and the Count appear in a flashback where he allowed what happened with the bandits. With a serious look, Ian listens to the Count's plea for his help. Upon accepting, Ian releases a dark aura, while Oberon lets out a terrifying screech. Before the knights, Oberon's shadow transforms into a giant monster, terrorizing the three of them. Moments later, Ian appears and accuses them of breaking into houses like stray cats. Threatening the knights, he says he'll finish them off to make an example for the others. After the scolding, the mercenaries are seen being disciplined by the mage the next morning. With the problem solved, Ian and Oberon take the mercenaries far away from the camp, afraid the rest of the mercenaries stay hidden, knowing they're dead if they leave. Upon hearing the news, the Count and Lucy are very happy with the results of the discipline. But suddenly, one of the knights enters the tent with a worried expression. Rushing to them, he warns that they have a very serious problem on their hands. Hearing the news, Ian and the rest of the group realize an unexpected problem has come up. With a serious look, the knight explains that their army is no threat to the enemy. Confused, Ian asks how that's possible, since they have a force of over 100 men. The knight then replies that the army has become completely harmless, leaving Ian baffled. Explaining the strategy, he says that if the army had looted the territory, the people would have begged them to stop. Since Graham is the one who holds the title of Talion, he would have had popular support to expel the mercenaries. But since the army has been marching peacefully, Graham has been seen as an oppressive tyrant. This has given him enough time to gather his forces and prepare for war. Also, since the Count's army can't act as they please, the troops' morale has plummeted. Realizing the situation, Ian understands that things have taken a strange and unexpected turn. Facing the Count, the knight asks if he will finally authorize the looting of the territory. Not knowing what to do, the Count turns to Ian and asks if he has a plan. Hearing the question, Lucy looks at the mage with an expression full of hope. With a confident look, Ian thinks for a moment before giving his answer. Saying it's not completely impossible, he suggests he has a solution to the problem. Hearing his answer, the Count and Lucy become extremely happy and eager for the plan. Meeting with the knights, Ian begins to explain his strategy to resolve the situation. From a distance, two knights comment that the mage is too arrogant for his age. The scene then shifts to Talion territory, in a place far from the battle. In the window of a house, a man yells at a crow to shut up, annoyed by the noise. But suddenly, he's startled to see a mysterious figure appear right in front of him. Outside, Ian and two knights face the man, asking if he's the owner of the wheat field. Startled by their appearance, the man demands to know who he is, but is cut off by the knight. With a look of pure panic, the man realizes he's in the presence of a famous mage. He immediately kneels on the ground and begs for forgiveness for his rudeness. Watching the scene, Ian and Oberon just look at the man with an indifferent expression. With a serious expression, Ian warns that the wheat in that field is already doomed. He then slams his staff on the ground, releasing an energy that spreads through the land. With his eyes glowing, he explains that evil has infiltrated these fields, and that the soul of the first Baron of Talion, whose land was stolen, is furious. Desperate, the man breaks down in tears and asks what they can do to fix it, but Ian cuts him off and tells him to be quiet and listen to the solution. With a hand to his ear, he pretends to be listening to an important message. Raising his arms, he shouts that the heavens are speaking and that the fury will pass if Lucy becomes the Baroness. Pointing into the distance, he says he feels a sinister energy and runs off with the knights. Kneeling on the ground, the man is paralyzed, thinking that the territory is being ruined by the usurper. A while later, the rumors Ian spread start to take effect among the people. Fearing the imminent disaster, the residents ask for Lucy to take the throne of Talion. In the streets, posters with Graham's name are vandalized with rotten tomatoes. Thanks to this, the Count's army's morale rises, and they march with more confidence. With the people's support, the group advances towards Graham's location, ready for battle. The scene shifts to the army camp, where a new crisis is about to begin. Before the Count, one of the knights refuses to fight on a dishonorable battlefield. Demanding an explanation, Ian asks what he means, and the knight reveals that the mage is spreading curses. With his hand on his head, the Count listens as the knight says their honor will be dragged through the mud. Annoyed by the accusation, Ian explains that the curse is a lie he made up himself, but the knights accuse him of trying to deceive them, saying a mage's word can't be trusted. Realizing the situation, Ian understands they've decided to label everything he says as a lie. With his hand on his face, he grows frustrated with the knight's lack of logic. Despite everything, the knights stand firm, saying they are the main stars of the war. Watching the Count, Ian notices the disappointed look on his face. After all, he knows he can't fight a war without his knights by his side. Thinking about the situation, Ian wonders if there's still a reason for him to stay. Turning to the Count, he tells the nobleman not to worry about the situation. Then he stands up and says he's leaving, since his presence is so unpleasant. Hearing his decision, the knights are surprised, not expecting this reaction. As he leaves, Ian warns them not to expect any help from him, no matter what happens. Outside the camp, Lucy runs after Ian and asks him to wait. Turning to face her, Ian stares at her in silence, waiting to hear what she has to say. With a worried expression, she apologizes for the knight's rudeness toward him. Then, she says her uncle was so flustered he couldn't say anything at the time. Seeing her sincerity, Ian feels a little better about the whole situation. With a smile, he says it's okay, and that he's not really angry. Joking about the situation, he says it's not a crime to leave the battlefield. But Lucy warns him that he'll lose the chance to gain any merit in the war. With a confident smile, Ian steps closer to her, ready to give his answer. Placing a hand on her head, he comforts her, leaving her speechless for a moment. Then he explains that merit doesn't matter, as long as he gets the sword she promised. Hearing his answer, Lucy gets emotional and blushes, unsure how to react. Moved, she promises she'll make sure he receives the magic sword. Taking it a step further, she offers to marry him, but Ian immediately rejects the proposal. A few days later, the Count's army finally marches into battle, now without the mage. Watching from a distance, Graham and his army spot the Count's troops approaching. One of the soldiers reports that the enemy has about 400 men, but Graham isn't intimidated. With an arrogant smile, he boasts of his fame as Graham of the single-edged sword. With his eyes glowing red, he shows his fury and determination for the battle. In his thoughts, he curses Lucy for allying with the Count, his enemy. Despite this, he believes she'll be his as soon as he wins the battle. Confident in his victory, he brags about having the Black Knight of the East by his side. With a victorious smile, he declares that victory is already as good as theirs. Suddenly, one of his soldiers spots the enemy army approaching quickly. Ignoring the number of enemies, he unsheathes his sword, ready for the fight. Raising his weapon, he swears to slaughter anyone who dares point a blade at him. Then he leads the charge, shouting for everyone to advance and start the battle. In the midst of chaos, the armies clash, beginning a violent confrontation. Far from the battle, the Count and his group watch the war unfold from a safe place. Seeing that the plan is working, Ian and the knight agree they have the advantage. With a confident smile, Ian believes victory is certain because of the difference in numbers, but suddenly his expression changes to pure panic as he notices something unexpected. In the middle of the battle, a mysterious knight charges forward with impressive strength. Beside Ian, the knight reveals that he is the Black Knight of the Eastern Empire. Watching the warrior, Ian recognizes the black armor, typical of the place famous for its long winters. With a worried look, he wonders what the fourth knight is doing there. On the battlefield, the mysterious knight advances, easily cutting down the Count's soldiers. With his sword, he slashes through his enemies with a single strike, clearing a path through the army. Realizing something is wrong, Ian's expression shifts to one of extreme concern. With incredible speed, the Black Knight charges forward, shattering the army's formation. Seeing the enemies advance, Ian understands they'll be in serious trouble if this continues. Worried, he asks the knight beside him what will happen if the central line is broken. With a grim expression, the knight replies that they will be the next targets. Hearing this, the Count and Lucy are paralyzed with fear at the turn of events. Then Ian realizes the Black Knight won't chase the fleeing soldiers, but will come straight for the Count. Shouting at his men, the Count calls them incompetent fools for failing to stop the enemy. Then he orders the knight, Sir Decade, to go to the front and take down the Black Knight. Hearing the order, Ian is completely shocked, unable to believe what he just heard. He wonders why, of all people, the Count had to choose Sir Decade. Recalling their interaction, he thinks that Decade was the only person who treated him like a human being. Knowing the enemy's strength, Ian understands that Decade won't return alive if he's sent into battle. Desperate, he tries to intervene, asking them to consider another way to resolve the situation. But without hesitation, Sir Decade accepts the order, leaving Ian completely stunned by the decision. Running up to him, Ian asks what he's planning to do, not understanding the knight's attitude. With a serious expression, Decade states that he will follow his lord's orders and stop the enemy. Outraged, Ian yells that he's going to stop the Black Knight, one of the strongest warriors on the continent. Trying to convince him, he says that going there now is suicide, and that it would be better to retreat with the Count. But Decade replies that he was accepted into the Count's service according to his knightly oath. Desperate, Ian shouts that he already knows that, but for a modern person, it's just dying in vain. Pointing to the battlefield, he says that this isn't protection, but trading one life for another. Realizing that Decade knows exactly what's happening and is still heading to his death, Ian feels powerless. With an angry expression, he wonders why it's always men like him who have to be sacrificed. Suddenly, another knight on horseback rides past them, shouting Decade's name. With a sharp look, Ian recognizes him as the knight who was guarding the center of the formation. Shouting that they've been defeated, the knight says he'll retreat with the count to buy some time. Disgusted by the shamelessness, Ian is left speechless by the knight's selfish attitude. Then the knight orders Ian to escort the count and Lucy to a safe place, but Decade interrupts the plan, saying he will stay behind and buy time for their escape. Raising his sword, he shouts for everyone to follow him and charges into battle. Watching the scene, Ian wonders if it's right to let the knight go to certain death. He then thinks that, even among those scoundrels, Decade was the only one who maintained his honor. Outraged, he wonders if it's fair for him to be the only one sacrificed in a war started by fools. Suddenly, he grabs Lucy by the arm, surprising everyone with his action. With a determined expression, he announces that the count has decided to retreat and they need to hurry. Climbing onto a horse, Ian prepares to leave, leaving Lucy behind as she shouts his name. Already on the horse, Ian yells for Lucy to get out of there with that scoundrel Silg. Hearing the order, she asks what he's going to do, worried about the mage's decision. With a determined expression, he reveals that he's staying behind to fight alongside Sir Decade. With a confident smile, he says his goodbyes, telling them to get out of this situation alive. Unable to believe what she's hearing, Lucy tries to stop him, but it's too late. Then Ian rides off at high speed, leaving her behind, shouting his name. Shouting for Decade, Ian catches up to him on horseback in the middle of the battlefield. Surprised by the mage's presence, Decade asks why he's there, and Ian says he'll draw the enemies away. Ordering him to protect the count, Ian hears Decade say that he can't handle them alone, but with a confident smile, he replies that he's a mage and can take care of himself. Seeing the boy's determined look, Decade senses the confidence in his words. With a smile, he understands that Ian isn't bluffing and has a plan in mind. Realizing he had worried too much, Decade finally trusts the young mage's potential. On the battlefield, the Black Knight leads his troops, yelling for them to capture the mage. Turning to Ian, Decade says he's counting on him and prepares to leave. With a serious expression, Ian wishes the knight good luck before starting his plan. Watching the knights ride off, he prepares to draw the enemy's attention. Suddenly, a blade grazes past his face, nearly hitting him head-on. Looking to the side, he sees the weapon embedded in a tree, realizing the danger he's in. With a panicking Oberon on his shoulder, Ian tells the crow to shut up and focus. Turning to the enemy army, he begins the first part of his plan, luring them into the forest. Entering the forest, Ian disappears from sight, and the soldiers follow without hesitation. The scene shifts to the inside of the forest, where the dark, silent environment creates tension. Inside, the soldiers regroup and begin searching for the missing mage. Suddenly, they spot a hooded figure on horseback, watching them from a distance. With his face covered, Ian begins to recite an incantation in a strange language. Not understanding what he's muttering, the soldiers are frightened by the sight. Then he tears the scroll he got from the count, activating the magic contained within it. Soon after, an explosion of energy engulfs the forest, hitting the soldiers head-on. In the midst of the chaos, the men are thrown back, screaming for help as the magic consumes them. Passing by the fallen bodies, Ian continues on his way, leaving the destruction behind. With a sigh of relief, he comments that it cleared things up a bit. Worried, he wonders if Sir Decade managed to regroup with the Count in time. Decided to find out, he moves forward through the forest, unaware he's being watched. Hidden behind a tree, the Black Knight watches the mage, preparing his next move. Meanwhile, the Count and his group flee on horseback, trying to escape the battle. As the enemy troops spot the Count, they advance, and Decade realizes they've been caught. Without hesitation, one of the enemy knights orders them to fire, trying to stop their escape. In that instant, a volley of arrows flies toward the group, ready to strike them. With a swift impact, the arrows hit the horses, which fall to the ground. Soon after, Decade himself is hit by several arrows that pierce his armor. Lying on the ground, he watches his horse whinny in pain before collapsing beside him. With the group surrounded, Decade gets up, though wounded, ready to protect the others. With his back to the sun, he advances alone toward the enemy army. Then he strikes with his sword, taking down one of the soldiers with a powerful blow, but he's quickly surrounded from all sides with nowhere to escape. Taking a blow from behind, he groans in pain but continues to fight with all his might. Fallen to the ground, he is surrounded by soldiers who attack him mercilessly. With the Count cornered, Lucy is paralyzed with fear, not knowing what to do. With a victorious smile, Graham approaches and tells the Count to surrender peacefully. Roaring in fury, Decade gets up once more, refusing to accept defeat. With one last show of strength, Decade charges forward but is hit by an arrow in the chest. Aiming his crossbow, one of the soldiers calls him a monster, impressed by his resilience. Then he fires, and the arrow hits the Count right in the neck as he tried to flee with Lucy. In despair, the knights cry out for their lord as the Count falls from his horse. Running to him, Lucy supports him, calling his name amidst the chaos of battle. In her arms, she hugs him, crying over the loss of her uncle and protector. From a distance, the soldier regrets not being able to capture the Count alive, as ordered. He then remembers Graham's orders, who wanted him alive for his own plans. Determined not to return empty-handed, the soldier decides to capture the woman instead. Raising his crossbow, he yells for his men to capture the girl at all costs. Following the order, the soldiers advance toward her, ready to complete their mission. But Decade gets up once more and stands in front of her, shouting for them to back off. With one last effort, he attacks, but is struck by a fatal blow to the neck. Fallen on the ground, he watches the scene helplessly as Lucy stands paralyzed with fear. Surrounded by soldiers, she despairs, knowing she doesn't want to be handed over to Graham. With her eyes closed, she prays for help, calling out the mage's name. Suddenly, a darkness engulfs the area, surprising everyone. In the confusion, the soldiers can't see anything, unable to understand what's happening. Alone in the darkness, Lucy is frightened, not knowing what to do next. Then a hand grabs her by the wrist, pulling her away from danger. In that same moment, Ian appears and holds her, ready to get her out of there. Blushing, Lucy feels safe in the mage's arms. Mounted on a horse, the two flee at high speed through the dark forest. Still shaken by the situation, Ian tries to calm down and understand what happened. Beside him, Lucy also seems confused, but relieved to have been saved. Coming to his senses, Ian asks her where the Count is, worried about his whereabouts. With a sad expression, she replies that he's gone, confirming her uncle's death. Shocked by the news, Ian falls silent, processing the loss they just suffered. Worried, he asks if she's hurt, and she thanks him for saving her. With a trembling voice, she asks what's happening and where Sir Decade is. With a serious expression, Ian says something went wrong, as Decade should have been heading her way. Hearing the knight's name, Lucy grows worried about what might have happened to him. Trying to calm her, Ian says he must be fine and that they need to get to the river. With a determined look, he explains that they need to lose the Black Knights who are after them. Suddenly, he grabs her, leaving her startled and confused about what's happening. Right after, the Black Knight appears before them, blocking their path. Without hesitation, Ian rides his horse into the river, trying to shake off the enemy. On the opposite bank, the Black Knight watches them, cutting off any escape. With a determined look, Ian knows that if he's caught here, it's all over. Getting straight to the point, the Black Knight orders him to hand over Talion. Beside Lucy, Ian prepares to confront the enemy, showing no fear. In a taunting tone, he asks if the knight knows his employer is a piece of trash. Hearing the taunt, Lucy is surprised, but she can't say a word. Then she explodes, screaming that Graham killed her parents and stole her lands. Turning to the knight, Ian asks if it's worth fighting for a man like that, but the Black Knight replies that he's just doing the job he was paid for. With his sword in hand, he gives one last warning, telling Ian to hand over Talion and leave. Hearing the ultimatum, Lucy's expression turns serious, ready for whatever comes next. With no other choice, Ian charges through the river, ready to face the enemy head-on. Giving a command to Oberon, he prepares to put his plan into action. In that same instant, the Black Knight's horse spooks, ready to throw him off. Surprised by the horse's reaction, the Black Knight is thrown to the side. With the impact, his sword falls from his hand, leaving him vulnerable for a moment. Fallen on the ground, he recovers quickly, ready to resume the chase. Turning to the mage, he asks what he did to spook his horse. Then Ian casts a spell, shouting to the sky and releasing a powerful energy. Crossing the river, he moves away from the Black Knight, who watches him from a distance. Suddenly, the water around the knight begins to churn, forming a barrier. With his sword, he slashes at the wave of water, trying to carve a path, but the force of the water throws him far back, preventing him from continuing the chase. The scene pulls back, showing the river calm again, with no sign of the Black Knight. Submerged in the water, the knight watches Ian get away, defeated for now. Relieved by their escape, Lucy calls out Ian's name, still surprised by what just happened. Looking back, Ian wonders if they're dead, worried about the enemy's whereabouts. With a watchful eye, he scans the area, making sure there's no more danger. At the bottom of the river, the Black Knight recovers, thinking a madman might attack him out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Ian thinks that a madman might try to stab him out of nowhere. Approaching the knight's body, he decides to take the armor for himself. With his hands, he begins to remove the Black Knight's helm, but as he takes it off, he and Lucy are completely shocked by what they see. Under the helmet, they discover that the Black Knight is, in fact, a woman. The scene shifts to night, where a campfire illuminates a makeshift camp. Tied to a tree, the knight awakens, now without her armor. With a serious expression, she stares at Ian, who asks if she's awake yet. Sitting near the fire, Ian and Lucy watch the prisoner, who is now unarmed. Screaming in anger, the knight asks where her armor is, and Ian ignores her. He then explains that since he couldn't trust her, he had to disarm her. Face flushed, the knight is ashamed to be seen like this by an enemy. Next to Ian, Lucy says she got what she deserved. Taunting the prisoner, Lucy says that dressing like a man to fight must be thrilling. With a sigh, Ian remarks that Lucy really doesn't go easy on anyone. Thinking about the situation, Ian comments that in this world, cross-dressing is strictly forbidden. In modern terms, he compares the situation to a man being arrested for dressing as a woman. With a sly smile, Lucy says that soon everyone will know the Black Knight was a woman. Desperate, the knight begs them to protect her honor by keeping her secret. But Lucy confronts her, saying that a knight who only cares about money has no honor. Hearing the accusation, the knight becomes furious, but she can do nothing while tied up. Sensing the tension, Ian asks Lucy to calm down, but she denies being upset. Holding her hand, he calms her down, leaving her surprised by the gesture. Her face blushing, Lucy is speechless, unsure how to react to his touch. He then asks her to let him handle the situation and go get some rest. Moving away from her, he approaches the prisoner, ready to talk. With a sigh, he apologizes for Lucy's behavior, trying to de-escalate the situation. However, the knight remarks that they made a big fuss over nothing. Saying he must be a follower of the Church of the Sun God, she glares at him with disdain. But Ian surprises her, saying that he is, in fact, a follower of that church. Surprised, the knight asks why he doesn't find it strange for a woman to dress as a man. Ian replies that there's nothing wrong with it, since men also dress as women. In a comical moment, he explains that they do it for cosplay, leaving the knight shocked. In a more serious tone, he tells her not to feel bad that her disguise was discovered. Hearing his words, the knight falls silent, processing the unexpected conversation. With a smile, she calls him a skilled but very eccentric mage. Then she addresses Ian by his title and asks to be treated with a knight's honor. Suspicious, he replies that he doesn't trust her enough to untie her. Desperate, she shouts that she swears on her knight's honor that she won't attack. But Ian confronts her, saying she hasn't even revealed her true identity. With his arms crossed, he asks how he can trust her, calling her Barenka. Surprised himself to know her name, Ian is confused as to how he discovered her identity. Tied up, she finally reveals her name, introducing herself as Barenka of House Metz.